Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551 Romanian New Deal 2. Many people who were stunned by this plan of the Romanian government have attracted a lot of criticism for such a generous investment. Many people have doubts about the Romanian government's generous infrastructure construction plan. Especially foreign media have called it a model of great success. They don't doubt the plan's effect on Romania's economy at all, but think that the huge amount of money needed for the plan is incredible. Many people also said that according to Romania's financial situation, so many construction plans were started at the same time, unless it was borrowing foreign debts. With the current world economy in turmoil, foreign debt is not so easy to borrow. These voices questioning whether Romania can spend so much money are basically from foreign countries domestically. This plan is generally applauded. Because of such a huge construction plan, the manpower and material resources required will also be very large, and many people can benefit from it. One of the most agreeable is Udina of Galati. As a well-known local businessman of building materials, Udina is even more excited about it. Originally, due to the US economic crisis this year, the construction products such as cement, river sand and other construction products operated by him were unsellable, but the announcement of the government plan immediately attracted a slight price increase. So why did he not applaud for this? But it's not enough just to applaud, but to contribute to the government's plan as a qualified patriotic businessman. So he threw the previous layoff plan into the waste paper pile, and also called in his son who was in charge of managing the sand quarry at home. Nemor, the sand quarry needs to buy more sand mining equipment and recruit more workers. We have to make a lot of money, while the government is ramping up infrastructure construction. Udina sat in his boss chair and told his son. Father, I'll decide the sand mining equipment right now, and I will also recruit people for the workers, but the company's money is only enough to buy 1 or 2 sand mining boats. Can we think of something else? Don't worry about the money, I'll find a way. I'll order the sand mining equipment first. I'm afraid I won't be able to get the equipment as soon as it's too late. There are not a few people with a keen sense of smell. I think it's because I went to the shipyard late. The order may not be placed until next year, but I heard a lot of people say that the government's plan this time is risky, and I'm afraid. Udina waved his hand to stop his son from continuing to say what he wanted to say. Nemor, doing business is like gambling. If you see an opportunity, don't hesitate. You can't make a big business by looking ahead and thinking about the future. This is the experience of your father and me over the past few decades. This time I saw it very accurately. You go ahead. After instructing his son, Udina still felt uneasy, picked up the phone and dialed a number. Hello, this is the director of Walch. I'm Udina. This time I want to order a few sand dredgers in your shipyard. Don't worry, I have prepared cash this time. I know your shipyard can. At the same time, we will build the 8 boats. I will order the 8 boats. Tomorrow, I will ask my son to pay half of the deposit first. Someone has already ordered 3 boats, and the remaining 5 boats are given to me. I'll refuse it. Well, build 5 first, and then build 3. That's it. I'll invite you to get together someday, when you have time. No problem. Wrap it on me. After Udina's put down the phone, he secretly sighed that it was dangerous, but he didn't expect someone to be faster than him. Fortunately, the man only ordered 3 boats, so he picked up 1 sheep. Now that the boat booking has been negotiated, there is another urgent matter to be resolved. He picked up the phone again. Hello, may I ask President Gandis? I'm Udina. I want to ask you a favor this time. I wonder if you have time. After the phone call, Udina put on his coat and prepared to go to visit Governor Gandis. This president is his old relationship. The two have known each other for many years. When he had only 1 sand digging boat before, Gandis was just a bank clerk, and he knew him because he needed a loan. At that time, Udina knew the importance of having a good relationship with the bank, and he made friends with him under his deliberate approach. These years of winning and consolidation have made his development smooth, and this Gandis has also risen from a salesman to a president. And this time you need to borrow money, of course. You need to find old relationships for help. Don't think that relations are only talked about in China, and relations should be talked about all over the world. In the same business, you can know the people at the decision-making level of the other party, and you do not know the two concepts represented by the decision-making level. People who can know the decision-making level can get first-hand information, and you can make plans for them in advance, while people who have no relationship can only passively accept it, which is very different in the market. Of course, this is two different concepts from bribing the decision makers to directly hand over the business to themselves. One is illegal and the other is not illegal. I need to expand production this time, Gandis, and I need to borrow some money from you. As soon as Udinir saw Governor Gandis, he spoke his mind. What are you going to take as collateral? My sand quarry can be used as a mortgage. You also know that there are currently 12 sand digging boats there. President Gandis pushed his glasses and continued to ask, then how much are you going to borrow? 2.1 million lei, borrowed for 3 years. Udinir's money is not just to buy a few sand mining boats, but also needs to be used in other areas. No problem, but the current bank borrowing rate is increasing. The previous minimum interest rate of 5.75% is no longer possible. Now it can only give you the borrowing rate of 7.25%. This is also the lowest interest rate I can make. Why are interest rates suddenly rising so much? Even if the interest rate was only raised by 1.5%, it would add up to 4.5% in 3 years. As if he knew he was going to ask this, Governor Gandis said with a sigh, this is an order issued by the head office. Not only our bank, but at present, banks across the country have generally raised interest rates, which is caused by the US economic crisis. Gandis' explanation made Udinir relieved. Since it is implemented by the national banks, there is no reason to let it go. So he spoke, just do as you said. I even brought the documents from the sand quarry. Let the people below check the documents and sign the loan agreement. If there is no problem. Then what do I get the money for? I need it urgently. It's definitely too late today. Come over early tomorrow to get the money. Thinking of tomorrow's arrangements, Udinir nodded and said, okay, I'll come over tomorrow to get the money. With money and expanding production out of the way, Udinir certainly needs to focus on sales. Since it is a patriotic businessman, it is natural to sell these building materials to the country. So just to be sure, Udinir made a phone call. Secretary Rex, I'm Udinir. May I ask if the deputy mayor has time? I want to meet you. Chapter 552 of the Romanian New Deal. 3. Of course, it's not just local businessmen like Udinir who are raving about large-scale infrastructure. If there is the most industrial atmosphere in Lviv, it is the steel factory. The steel factory, which covers an area of several square kilometers, has tens of thousands of workers, and its annual steel production accounts for more than 70% of the national output. Around the steel plant, there are the top heavy machinery factories in the country. In particular, the number 1 heavy machinery manufacturing plant in Romania is the most outstanding. This plant is also the only company in Romania that can produce tens of thousands of tons of free forging hydraulic presses and die forging hydraulic presses. At the same time, it also produces hundreds of tons of large-scale technical equipment such as metallurgy, mining, energy, transportation, automobiles, and petrochemicals. It can be said that the Eastern Galicia region, where Lviv is located, has become an indispensable heavy industry base in Romania. The results of the previous development of the region are being continuously fed back to enterprises across the country, so that they can get rid of the situation of relying on imported equipment. The country's large-scale infrastructure construction this time naturally requires the participation of 2 companies. Bridges and tunnels use a lot of steel, and generator sets always need factories that can make them, but that's just a small part of it. But it does not mean that it is not important. So this time, in order to ensure the construction of the country, the Minister of Industry Bardovin personally visited Lviv, and these 2 factories are also one of the key points of the inspection. Beside the blast furnace of the steel plant, Bardovin watched the workers work beside the steel furnace with great interest under the hot temperature. At this time, it was time for the furnace to be released. I saw the workers operating it, and the red molten steel was poured out of the huge steel making furnace. The molten steel scattered in all directions filled the stove with sparks under the prepared mold specifications. And the conveyor belt takes these hot molten steel through the cold water, and the scene of white smoke is by no means a fairyland. The orderly work scene of the workers watched Bardavin nod secretly, which made him unable to help but admire. It's the most beautiful sight in industry. The iron and steel industry can be said to be the foundation of the current industry. Without steel, there would be no industry. Whether it is light industry or heavy industry, steel is needed as a basic support. This is also one of the reasons why it is necessary to talk about steel output every time when describing the national strength of various countries in this era. There are other industries, only if there is a steel industry. If the blood of industry is oil, then the bone of industry is steel. Bardavin, who knows all of this, will praise when watching the steel come out of the furnace. It's all state support, workers' efforts. Although Bardavin only praised the splendor of steel making, Mittels, the head of the plant, also cautiously said he couldn't help but be careful, despite Bardavin's unremarkable presence in the political arena, but the Ministry of Industry he manages is the immediate boss of these enterprises. Although the heads of key enterprises like Mittels cannot be directly appointed or removed, they still have a huge home field advantage in the power of appointment and removal. At present, how many heads of state-owned enterprises in Romania cannot be directly appointed or dismissed by the Minister of Industry? For Mittels' cautiousness, Bardavin shook his head and warned, "You don't have to be so modest. We can all see what you paid in the steel plant. I remember that last year you overfulfilled the assigned task. The output of 2.18 million tons surprised me," and the Prime Minister Bardavin's words were simply praising his performance last year, and Mittels, who was extremely proud of the matter, naturally answered very modestly, "This is all due to the steel mills, and the mines have also made great efforts for this. Otherwise, the steel mills would have achieved such a high output." Mittels has done everything. Not only the steel mills have thanked them, but also those who are responsible for mining raw materials. Bardavin listened to his words and asked with a smile, "How is the task completed this year?" 97% of the steel task of 2 million tons has been completed. It is expected that the task assigned by the ministry will be completed in the next few days. This year's steel output will not be higher than that at the end of last year. Mittels' words made Bardavin very happy. "Very well. Under your leadership, the steel plant will definitely have a big breakthrough. However, the scale needs to be improved, and the current demand for armor steel in the Navy needs to be improved. Larger, which requires you to increase the research on duo steel. We will strive to get rid of the situation of relying on German technology as soon as possible, so that Romanian steel technology can reach a new level." Bardavin has been quiet in politics for many years, and words of praise and encouragement come when he opens his mouth. After he finished speaking, he patted Mittels on the shoulder, signaling himself to be optimistic about him. And Bardavin's praise also made others cast envious eyes on him. If eyes can kill, then Mittels is already riddled with holes, and Mittels took the opportunity to continue talking. "Your Excellency, our steel plant has invested a lot in technology at present. If you are interested, I can take you to the technical department to see where new types of steel are being researched." Bardavin was pleasantly surprised by Mittels' words, and he replied with great interest, "Oh, yes. Then lead the way. This way please." In the middle of the night, Bardavin, who had been inspecting for a day, was preparing to rest. Today's market results make him very satisfied, not only seeing the scale effect of steel making in the steel plant, but also the tireless research spirit of the steel plant on new technologies. Although there is no result yet, but in the explanation of the factory director Mittels, he also has a preliminary understanding of this. Moreover, the expenditure of the steel plant on the technical department can also be seen and felt. Not only the latest equipment, but also the top staffing. There are R/U002060 personnel from Germany, and there are talents cultivated by Romania itself. Everything is so well organized. Of course, he not only visited the steel factory today, but also visited several surrounding heavy machinery factories. Especially in the first machinery factory, hundreds of tons of integral steel are artificially made into the desired specifications like a dough under the action of a giant hydraulic press. All this makes Bardavin feel that Romania is not what it used to be. Although there are small twists and turns, everything is developing and growing in an orderly manner. One day, Romania's industrial prowess will surprise the world. Bardavin believes this because Romania's strength comes from everyone's contribution. For what he saw and heard today, Bardavin recorded it. When he returns to Bucharest, he will be presented to the king and the prime minister. Satisfied, Bardavin needs to rest early, and he needs to inspect other companies tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553 of the Romanian New Deal. 4. This winter in Chisinau is unusually cold, and the blistering wind hurts people's faces like a knife. Such bad weather made the pedestrians on the road much rarer, and Rodsk tightened his thick winter clothes, still marching against the cold wind. Today he is going to the employment agency on Dork Street, because there are news that there are many new posts there. As a father of two, Rodsk needs a steady income to support his family. So in the face of unusually bad weather, he was not afraid, and even hoped that the weather would be worse, which would reduce the number of his competitors. When he walked to the entrance of the employment agency, the results were not pleasant. Rodsk was a little disappointed by the long queue, but it was much shorter than it seemed a few days ago. The freezing weather made the people in the queue try to talk less as much as possible, but they still need to communicate from time to time. And Rodsk understands the words they talk well, and can only hear a few words from it. Yes, Rodsk is not a native, not even Romanian, he is Ukrainian. In the morning, he was a farmer in a rural farm in Uman, western Ukraine. However, due to the Romanian land reform, the landlord purchased a large number of agricultural machinery, and he did not understand any culture, because he was driven out by the landlord, because he could not use these machinery. He knows nothing but farming, so he can only go to a city that everyone praises to make a living. But maybe those people just came to the city to see the world, and don't know much about the specific situation in the city. So in Rodsk's view, life in the city is more difficult. He also went all the way from Uman to Odessa, and then to Chisinau. He has been in Chisinau for almost 3 months. He had been looking for 2 jobs before, but he was fired because of his stupidity. This made Rodsk feel a lot of pressure, and the previously settled wages were almost exhausted. If they can't find a job again, how can a family live in this cold weather? With a heavy heart, he could only continue to come to the employment agency to find work. You ask why don't you go to the skills training center first? Just kidding. The private skills training center needs to spend at least 50 lei to start, which is completely impossible for Rodsk, who is under heavy economic pressure. Unless he lets an old family, it's okay to not eat for half a month, and the money earned before is only enough for family expenses. Of course, there are also government-run skills training centers, but Rodsk has been there several times in a row and found that it was already full, which made him have no choice but to leave. Moreover, he didn't work for a long time in each place, and basically he could only cover the expenses of his family. Where did he get his savings to ensure his tuition fees and time to study? So he can only come to the employment agency again to see if there is a job to do. No matter what he does, as long as he can earn money, he is willing to do it. A long team. It also diminished over time, and soon it was Rodsk's turn. What is your name? Rodsk replied in his less than standard Romanian. Rodsk. What can you do? Grow the land. Rodsk's words made the registrar look up at him, and such a bizarre answer is rarely seen. Facing the registrar, who raised his head, Rodsk showed a simple and honest smile, which made the registrar feel as if he had seen him before. Go in with the watch. The registrar, who wrote the form, handed it to him and let him in. After entering the employment agency, Rodsk became melancholy looking at the recruitment information posted in the hall. He was illiterate, but it didn't bother him. He walked up to a staff member and asked with a smile, "Look at what jobs my form is suitable for." This is Rodsk's experience, as the staff here are sure to point out the right jobs for them. The strange registration information made the staff take another look at him. I saw him pointing to a job posting on the left. There's a brick factory there for you, but it's a bit hard and the wages are decent. Then he pointed to a job posting on the right and said, there is also a road construction job over there, and the salary is good. But you need to follow the progress of the project, and it is very likely that it will be difficult to go home. After pointing out 2 jobs that were suitable for him in a row, Rodsk thanked the staff greatly and chose the brick factory first. Here sits a strong man with 3 big and 5 rough hands, who seems to be in charge of recruiting. After Rodsk handed his form in front of him, the strong man picked it up and looked at it before putting it down. Will you work? Rodsk, who knew the meaning of his question, said quickly. I've never worked in a brick factory before. The first time. Well, let me talk about the situation of the brick factory first. Our brick factory is on the outskirts of the city. We take care of our meals and need to work 9 hours a day because you can only do stevedores. There are 115 trains in a month. If you need to take leave, you can take 2 days off every month. After deducting the salary of the day. Rodsk listened to the conditions mentioned by the strong man in charge of recruiting and thought about the monthly expenses needed by the family. He was a little moved. However, he may not have heard of this sentence of shopping around, but he also understands the meaning. So after the strong man finished speaking, Rodsk replied, let me think about it. No problem. After Rodsk put away the form and reintegrated into the team, he went to the recruiting position on the right. After queuing, it was finally Rodsk's turn, and he hurriedly handed over the form. This time, it was a middle-aged man who was in charge of recruiting, and he asked, after reading the Rodsk form, where do we work? We need to be with the road construction team. It's possible that you won't be able to go home for a few months. Would you like to? Faced with the question, Rodsk nodded quickly. I can accept. Well, I looked at your form, and I can only be an ordinary construction worker. But I need to train for a few days first. Do you have any questions? No. That's good. Let me talk about work and salary. I work 10 hours a day, and I will follow the road construction team. The workplace is basically in the wild. The monthly salary is 140 lei, of course. If you do well, you will be rewarded. Rodsk quickly calculated in his heart. It was obvious that this job would cost a lot more than the brick factory, which was a good deal for him. He basically had a decision in his heart and asked quickly, where would I find you if I wanted to? Costa Avenue, you know. If you decide to come to work, come to dock construction there. Rodsk, who took the recruiter's words to heart, replied immediately, no problem, I'll come over tomorrow. Rodsk, who quit the employment agency, waved his arm vigorously. He won't screw up again this time. Certainly not. The next step is to tell my wife the good news, so that she can take less time to do the laundry. When he thought that his wife still had to work with frostbite on her hands, Rodsk felt that she was too incompetent as a husband. The infrastructure construction promoted by the Romanian government has saved many people like Rodsk who have only a handful of strengths, at least allowing them to pass the stage of adapting from farmers to workers. Chapter 554, The Shadow of the Economic Crisis. Romania's New Deal started various constructions with the government's push. In February 1930, construction of the Bucharest-Odessa railway started. In April, construction of the Bucharest-Constanța and Varna circular railway started. In June, the construction of the Constanta-Bănești-Ciobău complex railway started. In July, the construction of the Bucharest-Ciobău-Lviv railway, which is the most difficult to construct, began. In just half a year, Romania has entered a large construction site, and infrastructure is being built everywhere. These infrastructures range from tunnels and bridges, to power station railways, to irrigation ditches and rural dirt roads. At this moment, Romania is busy with the construction of these infrastructures. Since everyone is so busy, Karaciuli, the top head of the government, is no exception. Now when he opens his eyes, there are many things waiting for him to deal with. In the Prime Minister's office, the secretary is reporting to Karaciuli on the things that need him to deal with at the moment. Prime Minister, the report sent by the province of Transylvania claims that the construction materials they are currently storing are not enough to support various construction tasks in the province. I hope the government can coordinate a material supply to the province. Hearing what the secretary said, Karaciuli felt a little strange, so he asked, This is directly transferred to the construction department. Why did it come to me? Isn't this the Minister of Transport leader went to inspect, and the other people who can manage this matter are not in Bucharest, so they were transferred to your excellency. The secretary's explanation made Carachuli relieved. Now that the large-scale infrastructure construction across the country has overwhelmed the people in the Ministry of Communications, it is completely normal for some things to be referred to themselves for a viewpoint. So Carachuri picked up the report and reviewed it after listening to the secretary's explanation. In fact, Transylvania didn't want much, just 30,000 tons of cement, 20,000 tons of steel, and some other materials. There are not many materials in Carachuri's eyes, but in Transinovaca's eyes, they are very good. God is pitiful, although it is said that Transylvania has a very high strategic position in Romania. But when it comes to economic development, it is just snot and tears, which makes people sad. Since the province was liberated, the province has received little financial support from the government, aside from some aid at first like pepper noodles. From the previous development of Western Galicia to the later infrastructure construction plan, Transinova province is the one with the least share. This has disappointed 2 million people in the province. However, this cannot be blamed for the lack of government support for Transylvania. Just look at the map to see why this is the case. Transylvania almost encloses the domestic Carpathian Mountains, and its territory is either mountainous or hilly. Moreover, the hilly areas suitable for human life only account for 2/5 of its territory, which makes it impossible for the government, which mainly develops the economy, to invest a lot of money here. The importance of Transylvania is also not revealed in this time of peace. The importance of the region for Romania will only be revealed in times of turmoil in Europe. Therefore, the province's economic growth over the years has been ranked at the bottom of the list, making the already wealthy areas gradually exposed. Of course, the government is also very clear about this, so taking this opportunity of construction, it also allocated a lot of materials to the area. It is mainly used for water conservancy construction and road expansion. After solving the construction material problem in Transylvania, Carachuri continued to listen to the secretary report on other tasks. Then there was an accident in Bacău County in Moldavia province. 19 workers were killed in a landslide caused by firing guns when the road was being built. Hearing that the accident had occurred, Carachuri's expression became serious. How's the aftermath work going? Carachuri is not afraid of accidents. How can construction projects now prevent accidents from happening? The most important thing is to appease the families of the victims without causing delays in construction and dissatisfaction with other workers. It was obvious that the secretary also knew where Carachuri's focus was, so he said it directly. The local government has sent people to appease them and paid enough pensions. The family members have done nothing but sadness which accompanied the construction work. No wonder Carachuri asked that. Because the current construction projects are too huge for the state-owned construction companies to undertake all of them. A lot of them will inevitably be released to private companies for tenders, and these private construction companies of various types of large and small. The Prime Minister is afraid that these private companies will only care about making money, not caring enough about workers. The secretary dug out the information and said, it's a construction company called Sherco. The company was founded by a local Gasilco man, but there were 3 more shareholders 6 months ago. Carachuri knew, as soon as he heard it, that this should be a construction company composed of local officials and businessmen. It is estimated that a local businessman gave a company that can determine the composition of the bidder's shares, and Carachuri has seen this a lot. So he said, knock on this company and make them pay attention to the safety of their workers. If something as serious as this happens again, they will be disqualified. Okay, I'll post a question in a while. Anymore. Carachuri asked the secretary. And there's a report here on the fallen Polish exports. The secretary said to hand the report to him. This is just done by customs. Looking at the report of the export, Carachuri couldn't help but say, how could it drop so much? It turns out that in this report, Romania's exports to Poland fell by as much as 24%. This economic crisis has gradually affected Europe, and now all countries have suffered heavy losses in the face of this crisis. The massive unemployment of workers also affects Poland's most important food export. The sluggish export of Poland naturally affects its consumption capacity. In 1930 Poland's imports and exports fell by 18%, of which exports fell by 13.7% and imports by 28.4%. As Romania's largest exporter, Poland's sharp decline in import and export trade has been most directly affected. A large number of orders from Poland have been cancelled, leaving these factories underutilized. Fortunately, domestic consumption has not decreased yet, and the operation of these factories can still be guaranteed. If the domestic economy is also in a downturn, it will be the most uncomfortable. I believe that many factories will be in danger of closing down by then. So this made Karachi immediately feel the importance of this matter. After dealing with other matters at hand, he immediately rushed to the palace. He planned to find a way for King Edel. Chapter 555 Italy, 039, shipbuilding plan. But when the Prime Minister arrived at the palace, there was someone faster than him. Your Majesty, this matter has a great impact on our navy. The one who was talking was Lieutenant General Lomaden, and it must be very important for him to come to Edel quickly. This is indeed the case. The reason for Lieutenant General Lomaden to come is that the Italian side withdrew their aid personnel, and the answer was that the Italian side needed to use these people. Originally, Lieutenant General Lomaden did not have any doubts about this. After all, these Italian technicians have been in Romania for several years, and they have also made great contributions to the construction of the Romanian battleship Mercia. However, when entertaining these technicians who were going to return to China, something happened that made Lieutenant General Lomaden feel that he should pay attention. That is, someone was drunk and said that this time they returned to China to design a new type of battleship to achieve the purpose of defending the Italian transport line. Lieutenant General Lomaden felt that this matter needed to be reported to Edel to know that, no matter how important it was to Romania, at least it would have a profound impact on the balance of the Mediterranean. So when Edel heard Lomaden's words, he finally sighed in his heart. The impact of developing Libyan oil is finally here. In fact, the development of Libyan oil, the impact is far more than that. In recent years, because of the development of Libyan oil, Italy's domestic economy has recovered rapidly. Its dependence on oil extraction and refining and the related chemical industry has made the Italian economy grow gratifying in recent years. The refinery it built in Genoa and the chemical plants in Milan and Turin have allowed Italian-related industries to flourish. As the most direct evidence, Italy used to have an annual outflow of about 200,000 people. After Libya's oil development, the annual outflow dropped sharply to 10,000 or 20,000 people. If the economy is not good, people have to go abroad to make a living. If the economic conditions are good, who would be willing to leave the familiar environment and go to a strange place to fight? And not only does Libyan oil cost Italy a lot of money, Romania suffers, but the excess oil is exported to other countries in exchange for profit. So even the arrival of the economic crisis has made Italy a lot better at present. Therefore, the Italian government, which has spare cash in its hands, urgently needs to defend its vital Libyan oil. At present, the navy owned by Italy obviously does not have an advantage over the French. The Italian government is naturally dissatisfied with the performance of its opponent, which is lagging behind the imaginary enemy France. As an aside, the two battleships don't feel very different, and both are pre-war dreadnoughts. Since you are not satisfied, then you need to build new battleships to compete with France. Therefore, in order to adapt to the new situation of Italy's demand for the Mediterranean Sea, the task of building a new class of battleships was born under such a situation. This has both military and political interests. Mussolini, who is currently in charge of the Italian government, also needs to build new battleships to satisfy the people's self-confidence in the country and to demonstrate his ability to govern. Therefore, this shipbuilding plan is completely built to meet the needs of the whole country. Of course, according to the Washington Naval Treaty, Italy also has enough tonnage of the main battleship to use. It should be known that the current Italian 4-year-old battleship is less than 100,000 tons, and there are enough the tonnages used by Italy, and the only factor that affects its construction is the issue of funding. The development of Libyan oil has made up for this shortcoming. So this time Italy plans to build a first-class battleship that crushes its opponents, and this requires the return of technicians who are currently helping Romania build ships. Because these technicians are too helpful to Italian shipbuilding, No matter what aspect it is a huge help to Italy's shipbuilding career, since it is an Italian ambition. The battleship built this time must also be very outstanding. This is where Italy needs to thank Edel. Because of its participation in the development and construction of the battleship Mercia, Italy has full confidence in building a super battleship equipped with 380mm naval guns. Many of the plans designed by the Italian side of this class of battleships refer to the design on the Mercia, such as the long forecastle, the underwater protection of the cylindrical structure, etc. But the most important thing is that the 380mm 50 caliber naval gun will also serve as the main gun of the Italian battleship of this class, as a 380mm 50 caliber naval gun jointly developed by the three countries. Its gun body is a movable barrel structure. From the inside to the outside, it is an integral inner bore tube, which is divided into two partial liner reinforcement layers, that is, two local reinforcement layers covering the medicine chamber in the rear half of the orientation part and a reinforcement layer in the front of the inner bore. The outermost layer is a movable quilt covering about 72% of the total length of the gun body. There is a tight hoop structure with an outer diameter of 610mm at the muzzle. The breech is attached to the barrel with a connecting ring. The tail of the gun is threaded with 6 airtight partition threads. The latch body is driven by a hydraulic pneumatic mechanism to open and close semi-automatically, and the action cycle is 3.5 seconds. Among them, the breech of the left gun of the turret is open to the left, and the other two guns are switched in the opposite direction. There are 4-cylinder type liquid gas recuperators evenly arranged around the gun tail, and the normal recoil distance is 1 meter. Each turret is equipped with 222 rounds of ammunition, including 195 rounds of armor-piercing rounds and 57 rounds of grenades. The main artillery body has a total weight of 102.4 tons, a total length of 19,581 millimeters. A barrel length of 19,000 mm/L50.0, a length of 15,850 mm for the rifled part, a length of 3071 mm for the medicine chamber, and a volume of 456.216 liters. The surface of the inner bore is engraved with 96 equal right-handed rifling. The depth of the negative line is 3.1 mm, the width of 8.458 mm, and the width of the positive line is 4.0 mm. There are hooded armor-piercing bullets and grenades. The armor-piercing bullet is 1.699 meters long and weighs 885 kilograms. The bottom charge is 88 kilograms of TNT. The propellant is packed in 6 packs with a total weight of 271.7 kilograms. The normal use of the artillery chamber pressure is 320 MPa, and the initial velocity of the armor-piercing projectile is 830 to 850 m/s. Its inner bore has a service life of 210 to 230 rounds and a maximum range of 41,800 meters. This is also the reason why Italy needs to choose this gun. The main gun developed in combination with the strength of the three countries is so powerful that Italy is reluctant to redevelop it after Edel. Since this class of battleships uses 380 caliber main guns, it will not be bad in other aspects. The current tentatively called Class B battleship has a design on paper of 35,000 tons and is equipped with 9 380 caliber main guns. The first two and the last layout, the maximum horsepower reaches 12,500 horsepower. The maximum speed is 29 knots, and it is expected to carry 1,978 officers and soldiers. And, in order to show the importance Italy attaches to the Navy, the class will be built with 2 barrels. Chapter 556, Political Changes in Germany. If Italy was in good shape when Edel pointed out Libyan oil, and there was still room to expand its armament, then Germany in 1930 was mourning point with the implementation of the Dawes Plan. American capital poured into Germany. Between 1924 and 1929, the United Kingdom and the United States provided Germany with loans of up to 32.6 billion marks. 70% of which were provided by the United States. The outbreak of the economic crisis caused the United States to withdraw its investment in Germany one after another, so the economy, which had been improving, entered a state of paralysis with the withdrawal of capital from the United States. During the economic crisis, its industrial production plummeted. From 1929 to 1932, coal production fell by 32.7%, pig iron production by 70.3%, steel production by 64.9%, machine manufacturing output by 62.1%, and power generation by 23.4%. The gross industrial production dropped by about 40%, the production of means of production by 53%, the production of consumer goods by 25.3%, the total export value by 69.1%, the total import value by 70.8%, and the treasury gold reserves dropped sharply by 4/5 point at the same time. Labor hours were cut by an average of about 47%, and in construction, the number of hours worked was reduced by about 66%. The number of employees in various industries has been greatly reduced, among which the number of employees in the steel, machinery, and power industries has decreased by about 64%, and the number of employees in the hard coal mining industry has decreased by about 47%. The economic crisis has had a catastrophic impact on the lives of the working class. Unemployment has increased rapidly. In September 1929, the number of unemployed was 1.3 million. A year later it reached 3 million. In September 1931 it rose to 4.35 million. Unemployment benefits fluctuated between 1644, large cities, and 1314, small cities, on a weekly basis. Only 82% of unemployed registered people can receive unemployment benefits, which is not enough to solve the problem of food and clothing. The economic crisis also hit the urban and rural petty bourgeoisie hard. During the economic crisis, the economic status of urban small businessmen, small business owners and artisans was volatile. Many factories closed down, and small and medium-sized enterprises went bankrupt in large numbers according to German official statistics. From 1928 to 1931, the total number of factory closures rose from 10,595 to 19,254, almost doubling. During the same period, the annual combined total of factories rose from 3,147 to 8,628, an almost doubled increase. Among them, the situation of individual traders was very embarrassing. In 1931, 6,664 stores closed down, and 3,581 were forced to merge. Millions of people have lost their jobs and the German economy is in trouble, and it is mainly the Weimar government's inability to do anything about an economy that is close to collapse, leaving many people disappointed. At this time, Hitler's *** Workers' Party took this opportunity to shout, "Let every family in Germany have milk and bread on the table." Such inspiring slogans naturally have enough supporters in the 1930 congressional elections. The German Workers' Party, represented by Hitler, won a total of more than 6.4 million votes occupy, and the number of ** parties in Congress actually reached 1/4. You must know that in the previous parliamentary elections in 1928, the ** German Workers' Party only won 810,000 votes. This rapid growth surprised everyone. When the news of the results of the congressional elections reached the Brown Palace, the newly built headquarters of the Communist Party, almost everyone cheered. And the only one who didn't cheer for it was its leader. "Hitler, what's the matter with you, leader?" His admirer Hess was the first to discover Hitler's anomaly, and he hurriedly walked over and asked, "Leader, what's wrong with you? The result of this election is very unexpected. I didn't expect so many people to support us. It seems that we are not far from governing." Seeing that Hitler, after hearing such excellent election results, still did not forget to think about the future, Hess was deeply impressed by this. "I saw Hitler continue. However, the vote of the people alone will not allow our party to govern. Next, we need to win over those factory owners and junkers. To gain real power." It can be seen that Hitler had a clear idea of how to take charge of Germany and knew what to do to pave the way for it. The abnormality of the two quickly attracted the attention of others, and I saw Göring, the fat man, pulled Hitler and said, "Leader, you can't miss today's carnival." And Göring's words also aroused the approval of others, and Rom, Goebbels, Himmler and others also spoke. "Yes, leader, you can't be absent." Hitler did not expect so many votes in this election. because he underestimated the losses suffered by the petty bourgeoisie in this economic crisis. In the eyes of ordinary people, German industry is mainly composed of the industrial monopoly of the concern enterprises. Yes, these companies play a huge role in heavy industry, and companies such as Maoki, Krupp, and Farben Chemical are among the best. However, although it has a monopoly in heavy industry, it cannot do it in light industry. Although monopoly organizations have also emerged in the light industry and food processing sectors, they are mainly lower-level monopoly forms of cartels that maintain independence in production and are united by small and medium-sized enterprises in the textile, food processing, paper, leather and other sectors. There have always been a large number of small and medium-sized enterprises, including early capitalist workshops, traditional industries, and peasant cottage industries. According to statistics, from 1882 to 1895, the number of large enterprises, more than 50 employees, in the German food processing industry increased from 1,125 to 1,826, and the number of employees increased from 148,512 to 246,490. The number of small and medium-sized enterprises, small enterprises with no more than 5 employees, increased from 244,161 to 268,145, and the number of employees increased from 595,369 to 775,000. In rural Germany, due to the German roads, the development of agricultural capitalism was slow, and there were also a large number of middle and small peasant economies along with the large estates of the Junkers. According to statistics in 1925, there were 3,046,302 small-scale peasant manors operating land of less than 20 hectares, accounting for 47.2% of the total agricultural area. There are 199,825 large farm manors operating 20 to 100 hectares of land, accounting for 26.4% of the total agricultural area. There are 18,671 Junkers large estates operating over 100 hectares of land, accounting for 20.2% of the total agricultural area. The arrival of the economic crisis has also dealt a heavy blow to the urban and rural petty bourgeoisie. During the economic crisis, the economic status of urban small businessmen, small business owners and artisans was volatile. Many factories closed down, and small and medium-sized enterprises went bankrupt in large numbers. According to German official statistics, from 1928 to 1930, the total number of factory closures rose from 10,595 to 17,254. An increase of 7 floors. During the same period, the annual combined total of factories rose from 3,147 to 8,628, an almost doubled increase. Among them, the situation of individual traders was very embarrassing. In 1930, 5,172 stores closed down, and 2,781 were forced to merge. Just when the economic and social status of the petty bourgeoisie was seriously threatened, they were disappointed with the Republic and gradually separated from the traditional bourgeois party to find a way out. And the propaganda slogans of the German Workers' Party just attracted these people. So this election made Hitler's Workers' Party one of the main political parties in Germany. With such an obvious effect, it would be a crime for Hitler not to seize such an opportunity. Chapter 557 Shipbuilding Plan. Edel naturally knew the result of the German election, and he was also very aware of Hitler's emergence. But although he knew about it, he didn't interfere. The reason is very simple. At least you know a little bit about Hitler, and it will be difficult for a leader you don't know to estimate his behavior. In addition, internationally, as Italy began to prepare to build their new battleships, the Dunkirk class, which had already prepared design drawings, was urgently stopped by France. The comparison between the 330 caliber and the 380 caliber main gun is only seen, and ordinary people know where the gap is. Therefore, the original Dunkirk class was swept away by the butterfly. Edel. It is said that this time, in order to counteract the madness of Italy, France will also build a battleship with 2 calibers of 380 caliber, but the specific information is still in the design stage, so Edel does not know. However, I heard that the French Navy requires at least 9 380 caliber main guns to be installed, with a tonnage of no more than 35,000 tons and a speed of no less than 28 knots. This is clearly to compete with the battleships built by Italy. The shipbuilding moves of Italy and France attracted the British and the United States and other countries to send diplomats to dissuade them one after another. However, the actions of the two countries are useless to the current Italy and France. They are like top cattle and have no regard for the feelings of Britain and France. For this reason, there are also worried propaganda in the newspapers by the media. This is a new naval competition, which naturally caused many people to be worried. However, the remarks of these people did not affect the government at all, because the current shipbuilding of Italy and France is only to make up for the tonnage of the capital ships of various countries in the previous Washington Treaty. Unless there is a new shipbuilding plan, Britain and the United States cannot stop Italian and French shipbuilding. The officers stationed by the two countries are also mainly for actions such as whether the caliber of the tonnage artillery of the built warships exceeds the standard. However, the continuous shipbuilding operations between Italy and France still had an impact on Romania, and undercut a lot of new shipbuilding plans submitted by Lieutenant General Lomaden. The most painful thing for him was to build another ship, Mercia-class battleship. Although the battleship is still outfitting, the Admiralty can't wait to start another one. Therefore, in the new 5-year shipbuilding plan, the Navy listed 1 battleship, 2 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 8 destroyers, and more than 10 other ships such as supply ships and landing ships to serve as logistics warship plan. And Edel directly cut down the battleship and only built 1 heavy cruiser, but kept the rest. Edel's actions directly broke Lieutenant General Lomaden's heart, and Edel could only speak to him in order to appease the head who worked hard for the Navy. It doesn't fit the construction plan for these ships right now. Lomaden knew that Edel was right. At present, Britain and the United States are already in a hurry because of the shipbuilding of Italy and France. However, because of the constraints of the Washington Treaty, we can only watch. If Romania also took the opportunity to continue building battleships, wouldn't this stimulate the nerves of Britain and the United States? But knowing is knowing. But looking at the 2 battleships that were cut down, they accounted for half of the total tonnage of the shipbuilding plan, which made him explain to the Navy. Therefore, Lieutenant General Lomaden still has to fight for it, otherwise the dissatisfaction of the naval officers and soldiers below will make him a big head. Your Majesty, regarding the shipbuilding plan, we can conceal the construction of the battleship from the outside world, and only claim the other parts. Hearing the words of Lieutenant General Lomaden, Edel asked back, "Do you think this is possible?" Edel's words silenced Lomaden. Romania is not Japan, and Varna is not Yokohama. It is totally impossible to secretly build a battleship of 30,000 to 40,000 tons. The required materials and other equipment are simply impossible to hide. So facing Edel's question, Lomaden could only be silent. Seeing the actions of the Secretary of the Navy, how could Edel not know that the other party was silently opposed? But now is really not a good time to build. But Edel still has other ways to appease the hard-working Secretary of the Navy. Minister Lomaden, the current development of the Navy under your leadership is enough to prove your ability. I think Romania, as a country on the Black Sea coast, needs to pay more attention to the Navy. Since you value it, then approve this shipbuilding plan. Lomaden shouted wildly in his heart, but he could only say these words in his heart, and dared not say them out. And in order for the Navy to have matching status, I think there needs to be an admiral in the Navy. Edel's words filled Lomaden's eyes with hope, not for himself. Although there is a certain factor in it, a soldier who does not want to be a marshal is not a good soldier. This is not just a sentence of Napoleon, but also represents the dream of thousands of officers and soldiers all over the world. More importantly, it represents an improvement in the status of the Navy. Every time I see that the generals and even the field marshal of the army are talking about you, Lomaden, who still holds the rank of lieutenant general, feels that he is not enough. If it weren't for Edel's support in the past few years, the Navy would have been deprived of a greater share of military spending. You must know that rank is very important in the army, and you need to salute when you see someone with a higher rank than your own. And many people in the Navy are talking about when the Navy can have its own admiral. Lomadin also thought that he needed to wait for the Merca to serve, but he gave himself a surprise now. Is this a slap in the face to a sweet date? Ignoring Lieutenant General Lomadin's suddenly complicated heart, Edel continued. The battleship may still be built, but it needs to be set back 2 or 3 years. When the situation is suitable, I will approve the construction. However, I hope that the next time the battleship is built, don't continue to give me the blueprints of the Mercia class. I hope that the new battleship is bigger and stronger than this one, and has enough ability to deter other countries. And you can also see that the Mercia class is still the top battleship in the world, but the times are developing. Your navy should also take into account in advance at this point. Edel's words made Lomadin regain his confidence. Although the king did not say who was the deterrent to other countries, Lomadin immediately thought of the current Britain and France. He still doesn't know what the virtues of the Soviet battleships are. The only countries that can build a threat to the Merca class are Britain and France. Italy seems to be wearing a pair of pants at the moment. As for the fact that the United States and Japan are too far apart and there is no conflict of interest, it is not in his consideration point, and in his heart, he also has enough imagination to break through the Black Sea and enter the Mediterranean Sea. Romania also has interests in the Mediterranean Sea, although it is not as good as the current Black Sea. Who can tell what will happen in the future? So Lomadin, who was constantly thinking about it, accepted this new shipbuilding plan, and Edel sighed deeply when he saw Minister Lomadin, who left with joy. If you put money into the navy now, wouldn't that reduce your future bargain hunters? Just give half of it, and in the future, it will be compensatory to make it big and special. Sure enough, Romania's seriously shrinking shipbuilding plan has hardly attracted the attention of the United Kingdom and the United States. They are still closely monitoring the shipbuilding activities carried out by Italy and France. Chapter 558, Turbulent Bulgaria. At a time when Italy and France were building new battleships and Romania was supplementing its naval strength, as Romania's neighbor, Bulgaria is still in turmoil. It may be a little inaccurate to say that it should be more turbulent. Speaking of Bulgaria, the more bitter enough. People all over the country tightened their belts and shrunk their clothes, and it was not easy to overthrow the mountain Turkey that was on their heads and won a rich victory. As a result, half of the winning results were lost after a hard fight in the Balkan War, and the First World War was dislocated. Not only the results were lost, but also a lot of costs were incurred. Years of war not only destroyed Bulgaria's economy, but also brought huge reparations on its back. The turmoil in these years is basically caused by public dissatisfaction and reparations, and the Sofia government has racked its brains in order to recover the economy. In the past few years, Bulgaria has gradually recovered its vitality, and the life of the people has gradually improved. Who knew that a financial crisis sweeping the world would suddenly break out at this time, making the previous efforts completely in vain? Exports on which the government depends have also been hit hard by the economic crisis. In fact, think about it. Bulgaria's largest export value is cigars and rose oil. This stuff can neither be eaten nor drunk, and it is only after people meet the food and clothing problem that they need it. And now most people are still hungry, who will spend their spare money to buy this. So the collapse of exports of these two items has made the Bulgarian economy worse. Moreover, Bulgaria is an agricultural country by nature, and it has to import food. Is there enough industry to make profits for it? So now Bulgaria is really struggling. Especially Bulgarian farmers. They also expect to sell roses in the fields in exchange for enough food and daily necessities. Now everything is in jeopardy. Since it's time to eat, don't think that these farmers still have to keep their feet. So the Bulgarian turmoil began. Lorkov walked out of his house quietly. His heart was a little heavy, and no one came to buy the roses grown in his house. There is no bread and milk. At breakfast, my wife whispered to myself that there are only 2 days worth of potatoes. The implication is that he needs to find a way to spend this period of time. He also knows the situation of his neighbors, and everyone has no surplus food. What should I do myself? The troubled Lorkov walked out of the village with these worries. First, he went to the town to find out if there were any merchants who had purchased them. As long as the roses could be sold, the current difficulties could be alleviated to some extent. I heard that the economy outside is not good now. Why haven't the purchases of this year come yet? Point. The bumpy road did not cause Lorkov any discomfort, but when he was about to get to the town, the noisy voice from the town made him a little bit puzzled. You must know that their town is not so noisy on weekdays, but something must have happened this time. Wanting to find out, he involuntarily quickened his pace. Point. When I got to the town, I found that many people gathered here, but they were all angry, and from time to time someone cursed loudly. Lorkov stepped forward to pull a person and asked, "Brother, what's going on?" The person who was pulled by him immediately told the truth. Point. It turns out that someone came to buy roses today, which is naturally a good thing. They are basically farmers who grow this rose in their town, so they are naturally looking forward to it. Point. However, the purchase price this time was too low, only 29 levs for 100 kilograms of roses, which was unacceptable to them. Point. Last year, it was still more than 80 levs per 100 jin. How come it has dropped so much this year selling at this price? I can't even get the cost back. Point. The peasants who were onlookers were chatting with each other. At the center of their attention, a well-dressed businessman was smoking a cigarette slowly. Maybe he was so irritated by these voices that he stood up and said, "Point. This year's purchase price is only so much. If you don't want to sell it, you can rot in the ground. Tell you that this year you have only me as a buyer. If you don't believe that, you can take these roses to Plovdiv and buy them yourself. If the price is higher than mine, I'm willing to pay him 5 times the difference." Point. The buyer's swear words caused a commotion in the crowd. At this moment, they believed the arrogant buyer's words. 9 points. But the problem now is that the purchase price can't even get back the capital, which makes them how to live in the future. Point. Lorkov also had a helpless expression on his face at this time, thinking that his wife and children at home still had a year of hard work, and his unwillingness spread in his heart. Point. At this time, a person came out of the crowd and stood in front of the buyer. Marklide, can you mention the purchase price this time? At your purchase price, too many people will not be able to eat, let alone buy seeds, fertilizers and other materials next year. You can't buy this one. Yeah, next year will not come. Point. Buyer Marklid smoked a cigarette and looked up at the man in front of him. Point. Who am I talking about? Robertov, I didn't set this price. It's the same price in Plovdiv, and there can be no higher or lower price. As for whether you sell it or not. Point. Marklid stood up and glanced at the crowd around him contemptuously. You can decide for yourself. Exports have plummeted this year anyway, and there are layoffs in factories. Marklid's words caused another commotion in the crowd, and some people with a bad temper wanted to force their way to the front and beat the profiteer. Marklid was not afraid at all, and with a wave of his hand, a few huge men with round waists stood in front of him. He continued confidently, "Listen to all of you, the price won't change this year. Don't be afraid to tell you, not only in Plovdiv, but even the whole of Bulgaria at this price. If you don't want to sell yourselves to go abroad, you can do it in other countries. The sale is higher than my purchase price, but can you afford the expenses on the road?" The farmers present saw that the most prestigious Robertov still failed to negotiate, and there was nowhere to vent their inner disappointment. However, the difficulties in reality made many people choose to bow their heads. They slowly left the crowd and brought these products home to talk about it. Point. The performance of these people made Robertov look anxious in his eyes, but he had nothing to do about it. I could only curse harshly. This damn world. Point. But at this time, there was a commotion at the scene. Someone couldn't stand the exploitation of this profiteer, so he couldn't help but throw his fist up and give him a blow while he wasn't paying attention. Point. Marklid, covering his cheeks, immediately shouted in a shrill voice, "Beat this guy for me. Kill this bastard who did something wrong." Point. Under the boss's order, the thugs surrounded a young man and waved their fists to beat the guy who dared to make trouble. Point. Seeing all this, Robertov immediately stepped forward to persuade him. "Stop, I tell you to stop." Point. The thugs looked back at their boss, and only after being instructed did they let go of the bruised young man. Point. Robertov stepped forward and helped the young man, who he knew was a fellow from Poke village next door, who seemed to be called Clemens this time. "For your sake, I won't give this lawless young man a general consideration. But the purchase price will not change. You can decide for yourself." Point. After leaving this sentence, Marklid swaggered away with his men. Point. Lorkov, who witnessed all of this with his own eyes, could only curse to himself. What kind of world is this? The government doesn't care about these profiteers. Chapter 559 Bulgarian Social Democratic Party. While Lurkov and others were cursing the Bulgarian government, there were also a group of people cursing the government in Pleven. However, unlike the peasant status of Lurkov and others, they are members of the Bulgarian Social Democratic Party. What the hell is the government doing now to allow the economy to collapse? Andrei Lepchev does nothing about whether he wants to remain prime minister or not. The speaker was Rilchev, the propaganda minister of the Bulgarian Social Democratic Party, who was so dissatisfied with what the current Bulgarian government was doing that he cursed the government loudly in the party gathering. Keep an eye on it, Rilchev. If you think about it the other way around, this will at least make our party more useful to voters. It's not just our party, but other parties are dissatisfied with the ruling Democratic Alliance. It was party chairman Kirstov who was speaking. He saw that Rilchev's scolding had gone too far, and he opened his mouth to dissuade him. The members of the Bulgarian Social Democratic Party are a new political party. The party was established in 1922 and was first active in the northeastern region of Bulgaria and only recently promoted their ideas throughout the country. Their slogan is to make bread and milk available to every family. Is not very familiar. Someone copied it. And this slogan has allowed the party to expand rapidly in the past 2 years, and the votes in the parliamentary elections have increased from 150,000 votes 2 years ago to the current 600,000 votes 21. The party's political proposition relies on the economic development of neighboring Romania to escort Bulgaria. Let post-reform the current chaotic economic situation in Bulgaria. And the party is hostile to Greece, which currently has a conflict of interest with Bulgaria. Because of the party's slogan, Bulgaria cannot stand the loss of access to the Mediterranean and Bulgaria needs to restore sovereignty over Thessaloniki. Simply put, the party's proposition is to take refuge in Romania and oppose Greece. The fact that such a party that looks a bit like a Romanian lackey still attracts so many votes has a lot to do with Bulgaria's external environment. Opening the region, Bulgaria has 4 neighboring countries, but unfortunately all 5 neighboring countries have had wars with Bulgaria before. And since Russia changed its color, Bulgaria has been lacking foreign aid or a big brother. And which of the 4 neighboring countries can serve as foreign aid for Bulgaria? First of all, Turkey needs to be excluded, mainly because of its historical and religious reasons, so that Bulgaria cannot cooperate with Turkey, even if the 2 countries have a common enemy, Greece. Then, Greece was the enemy, and it was ruled out, because Greece took all the Mediterranean coast of Bulgaria after World War I, making Bulgaria a Black Sea country. There was also a conflict with Bulgaria in 1926. As far as this conflict is concerned, Greece claims that one of their dogs ran into Bulgaria. Soldiers were asked to enter the security territory to search. Faced with this unreasonable request from Greece, Bulgaria of course refused. So Greece issued an ultimatum, asking Bulgaria to agree to its request. And the next operation of the Bulgarian government is confusing. First rejecting the ultimatum. But I also feel that fighting for a dog and then detonating the Balkan conflict is a bit of a loss. So Prime Minister Alexander Zankov ordered the Bulgarian army to carry out only symbolic resistance, and everything, such as the League of Nations ruling, was also known as a dog's war. This kind of state of no war and no talk naturally attracted the attack of the Greek army. Greece has been attacking the outskirts of the border city of Petrich, only to stop at the order of the League of Nations. In the end, Bulgaria paid $450,000 in compensation for the lost dog. The money was not much, but the humiliation was unacceptable to the Bulgarians. So in 1927, Prime Minister Alexander Zankov was ousted and replaced by Andrei Lepchev. As for Yugoslavia, although they are all Slavs, Bulgaria's relationship with them is not harmonious, and the country is all focused on France, and there is no friendly action towards Bulgaria. So currently the only contact Bulgaria can contact is Romania. Moreover, the economic ties between Bulgaria and Romania are also very close, and the food that Bulgaria needs to import basically comes from Romania. Moreover, it has become a trend for Bulgarians to work in Romania, and many people have the most intuitive feeling about the power of Romania. Therefore, It also made him full of praise for Romania's development after returning home, and the spontaneous propaganda of these people also made local Bulgarians feel good about Romania. After all, the gap between the two is too large to compete with each other. Folk opinions make Bulgarian middle and upper classes, and they cannot turn a blind eye to this. And they, who are more knowledgeable, have a sharp contrast to the previous development of the two countries. After all, at the end of the 19th century, the gap between the two countries was not obvious. By the time of the First World War, Romania's rapid development had left Bulgaria behind. The two Balkan wars greatly damaged Bulgaria's vitality and completely opened the gap between the two countries. The Bulgarians who were on the wrong team in World War I could only watch their neighbors devour the enviable spoils, while they needed to cut their losses. So at that time, many people were reflecting on the importance of a wise monarch to the country. They regretted it too, regretted not inviting Carol to be king of Bulgaria. However, this emotion is gradually fading with the passage of time. After all, everyone has to look forward and regret that there is no medicine in the world. It's just that the outbreak of the economic crisis has made this kind of voice come out again. But this time, it's not that I regret not being able to invite Carol, but why I can't choose another monarch. The appearance of this kind of voice represents the public's dissatisfaction with the current Bulgarian royal family and government. They are afraid of comparison in everything. Look at how wise the monarchs of neighboring countries are, and then look at the performance of their own monarchs. No wonder there are such voices who made Bulgaria's current king, Boris III, distracted from politics. Instead, the greatest joy in life is to drive a train, followed by the study of the mechanical structure of clocks. So much so that the drivers of the Orient Express crossing the European continent were warned by the railway company not to allow the king to approach the cab when the train was traveling in Bulgaria. Although this apolitical attitude helps it escape political disputes, it has disappointed many people. Still the same sentence, everything is afraid of comparison. The growth of the Bulgarian Social Democratic Party is a reflection of this voice, and of course a little funding can also help to grow and develop. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560 Make Waves Again. The growth of Bulgaria's leading party has always been a good thing for Romania. That's right, the leading party, because the Bulgarian Social Democratic Party has been secretly funded by Romania. Romania has invested a lot of manpower and material resources in the party, and the mastermind behind all this is the wise and powerful His Majesty Edel Hohenzollern. Being stuck in the Black Sea will prevent Romania from effectively exerting the influence it deserves in the Middle East. It also affects Romania's market development behavior in the vast Asian and African countries and regions. So for the Kingdom of Bulgaria, Edel is determined to win. However, despite the ambitions for Bulgaria, it is not a good time to seize it. Because at present Britain and France have not been completely dragged down by the domestic economy, and there is still room to intervene in European affairs, and Edel does not want Romania to be targeted as an early bird. In addition, the current Bulgarian leading party is not strong enough, and if Romania's ambition to merge with it is displayed now, it will lead to fierce resistance. Although the Bulgarian people currently have a good impression of Romania, they have not completely given up their confidence in the country. In fact, several countries in the Balkans have ambitions to dominate the Balkans, but they have only realized that Romania will become the most powerful one. Need to wait a little longer. This is Edel's attitude towards Bulgaria at the moment. Of course, the reason for Edel to give up the merger with Bulgaria now is the domestic situation in addition to the external environment. Although the Romanian economy is currently boosting economic development due to increased government investment. However, these funds are all from the additional banknotes, which can be said to share the people's wool. And what is reflected in the market is that the Romanian leu has depreciated 6 in the foreign exchange market. This is the market factor, the reaction to the government's additional currency issuance. This has also led to a general rise in domestic prices, causing dissatisfaction among the people. Edel certainly cannot ignore this situation. People's dissatisfaction is likely to trigger a search for an outlet, and no matter what they take to vent, it will cause losses to Romania. Since the people need to vent their dissatisfaction, let Edel help them find it. Point all of this you have suffered is a conspiracy from the Red Soviet Union. Point that's right, the outlet that Edel chose was the Soviet Union. Don't get me wrong, Edel is not trying to attack the Soviet Union. In terms of the current development of the Soviet Union, it is self-evident who will win the battle with all the strength of the two countries. Although it is impossible to fight with the Soviet Union in full force, skirmishes can still be operated. Point that's right, Edel intends to have a skirmish at the border, because at present the Soviet Union is doing its best to develop the domestic economy without using other energy to focus on other things. Haven't you seen that the Soviet Union has been repairing diplomatic relations with neighboring countries? Moreover, even Romania and Poland, two countries that occupied a lot of their original territory, Stalin was able to put down his posture and send people to secretly contact him, but it was unsuccessful for various reasons. Diverting people's attention from domestic issues to foreign countries is a trick that many governments at all times, at home and abroad, have used. Some succeeded, some failed. And Edel also intends to use this trick this time. So now he has found the three current helms of the army, the Minister of the Army Marshal Prezhan, the Chief of the General Staff General Ploiesti, and the Director of Army Education Admiral Mandif. Edel had already quietly informed the three army leaders of his intentions, and now it is time to listen to the army's choice of location for this conflict. Outside the King's office, the guards were ordered to mirror anyone who would break in, so they watched vigilantly around to prevent anything suspicious in the office. There is a huge battle table, which is divided into two parts by a red line, with Romania and the Soviet Union written on one side. This is a map of the border between Romania and the Soviet Union. On this border map, various military markings such as towns, troops, fortresses, roads, etc. are also marked, and Admiral Ferret is holding a baton, pointing somewhere on the map, while telling Edel, "Your Majesty, there are several suitable locations for small-scale conflicts located on the Meran River on the border of Ternopil. It is not suitable for large-scale battles, because of the hilly terrain. It fully meets His Majesty's requirement for no more than one division. However, the disadvantage is that it is far from the enemy town of Shepatovka. Not far, it may cause misjudgment by the other party." Edel listened to the report of Admiral Ferret while looking at the location it pointed to. From the map, the Meran River is the border between the two countries. However, there is a sudden turn here, leaving a lot of Soviet territory on the west bank, and the military's intention is obviously to use this to make trouble. It seems that His Majesty does not want to cause a large-scale conflict. Admiral Ferret, who knew Edel's mind, continued. There is also Khmelnyk in Vinnytsia, where there is a border where both sides bypass a mountain called Helmek for historical reasons. We can take the opportunity to create conflict in this area. The disadvantage is that here it is the closest to Kiev, and the advantage is that our country is more convenient for transportation here, which is conducive to our operations. Edel saw what was marked as Mount Helmek, not far from the border town of Khmelnyk, and there were far fewer roads in the Soviet Union. Its nearest town, Kazatin, is also not a short distance away, which is very beneficial to Romania's topography. There is also Oshneka in Nikolaev. Because it is full of swamps, it is also not conducive to large-scale battles. The scale of battles can only be completed by one brigade level at most. This is indeed marked as swampy terrain. It can even be said that except for a few accessible roads, the rest of the place is either a swamp or a dense forest, and Khmelnyk is the only town in this small area. After listening to Admiral Fleet's remarks, Edel looked up and asked, "So which one is your opinion?" The three of you look at me, I look at you, and in the end, Marshal Ploiesti said, "According to His Majesty's request, our opinion is to choose Mount Helmek and Khmelnyk." Then Ploiesti said the benefits of choosing here. First of all, it is impossible for the Soviet Union to retreat from Kiev, which is conducive to the outbreak of conflict. Secondly, the terrain here is beneficial to us. This Helmek mountain is gentle in the west and steep in the east, and our transportation in this area is also more convenient than our opponents. In addition, this area is not the strategic point synonymous for the Soviet Union to seize. The current Marshal of Prezhan is more and more like the deceased Marshal Kortois, who basically delegated power to the two generals, Fayliat and Mandive, and rarely said the decision directly, although this must be the result of the three people's discussion together. But it is still rare. Then choose Mount Helmek, which is in our best interest. Edel pointed to Mount Helmek on the map and said his decision. Chapter 561 Helmek Conflict 1. September is the harvest season, and the hard-working farmers need to take stock of the fruits of this year's labor, so there is a busy scene everywhere. In the small town of Khmelnik, it is another scene. The town is full of soldiers in military uniforms, who patronize the small town's small shops and 2s and 3s in the barracks outside the town. Major General Solder, the commander of the 24th Division, was giving orders. When will the artillerymen arrive? They will be one of the next main forces. Captain Toke promised me that they will arrive at the scheduled time. What are they doing? The day after tomorrow is the scheduled time, but they are still there. Kamenet's looking at Major General Solder, who was furious. Colonel Badarko, the chief of staff, couldn't help but say, at present, it seems that the artillery regiment has been unable to arrive at the specified time, so do we need to consider borrowing some equipment from friendly troops? At least 105 howitzers need to be borrowed a little. These heavy artillery can't arrive within the specified time. The chief of staff's words made Major General Zelda think about it, and then declined. Chief of staff, don't mention this proposal. You must know that the selection of our troops this time has already caused dissatisfaction among many colleagues. If you let friendly troops support, because of the delay of artillery, it will not cause a violent response. So this proposal is no need to say any more. Major General Zelda's categorical refusal made Colonel Badarko unable to say, but without artillery support, the next battle will not be so easy to fight. Not necessarily how to say, Major General Zelda explained, while pointing to the combat map. Look, Helmek is 749 meters above sea level, not much higher than the surrounding area. Our division uses 75mm caliber field guns, which are enough to target the Soviet Union's current large-scale division level 762mm field guns. I believe we will wait until the Soviet Union. When the troops behind the army arrived in Helmek, our 105 howitzers should have arrived long ago. And after the start of the battle, we can still get some support from the 4th Artillery Regiment, which is enough to ensure that our army is invincible. That's right, Major General Zelda made a compromise after full consideration, so that after the conflict was triggered, the speed of the Soviet army's assembly and the route of entry were fully considered. According to his prediction, after learning that Mount Helmek was occupied by our side, it would take 2 days for the Soviet army to submit the report and make a decision, and then it would take another 3 days to gather its forces and move over. In 5 days, even if it is pushed by hand, it should be pushed. In the early operations, the 762mm divisional field guns used by the Soviet army were of the new type 190,230. This new gun has been extended from the original 30 caliber barrel to 40 caliber. The muzzle velocity is 662s, the angle is 1737 degrees, and the maximum range is increased from 8,500 meters to 13,290 meters. The Soviet artillery is powerful. Romania is not bad either. At present, the Romanian army has also replaced a large number of new 75mm field guns. The new 75mm field gun is called the 190,629 type. Its diameter has also been increased from 32 times to 43 times, and the maximum range has also been increased from 8,400 meters to 13,520 meters. Not inferior to the current Soviet Union's new 762 caliber field gun. Not to mention that the 24th Division is currently equipped with the latest Romanian 105 caliber howitzers. Its 35 times the barrel can hit the shell to a distance of 14,180 meters. Moreover, the installation of the newly developed muzzle brake can also reduce the recoil of the 36, allowing the thick tires to be installed on the howitzer, which in turn increases the mobility of the gun point. If it weren't for the floods that overwhelmed the railway bridge and forced the artillery units to be diverted to road transport, then at the beginning of the conflict, the Soviet army would have felt its power now. That Major General Zelda has considered a solution, Colonel Badako can only continue to ask the next question. Then, Commander, have you considered which regiment to send to occupy Mount Helmech first? I've already thought about it, and let Lieutenant Colonel Mizik lead his 3 regiments to take down Mount Helmech first. For this reason, I plan to equip the 75th Mountain Field Artillery Battalion, an engineer company, and give him 4 more 127 anti-aircraft machine gun. Let it carry enough ammunition to defend this high point for me, and I will take the other troops of the division as backup and give them a blow. When the Soviet troops come up point, it was clear that Major General Zelda intended to put Mizik's regiment at a critical point. As a battle-hardened general, Major General Zelda knows where the crux of future conflicts lies, and puts his most elite cards there right from the start point, and the 3 regiments are indeed worthy of his entrustment. In the 2 years of intra-division tactical drills, the 3 regiments have repeatedly won the first results. As the trust and expectation of his subordinates, Major General Zelda is obviously willing to use him as a core garrison force point. After hearing the division commander's words, the Chief of Staff thought of the performance of the 3 regiments on weekdays, and agreed. This arrangement is reasonable point. While the 2 division commanders were discussing, Lieutenant Colonel Mizik, who they said was trustworthy, was also writing a letter to his wife. As a qualified soldier, he certainly can't write about the military, mainly because his lovely son is in school grade. In order to give that son a sufficient education, he asked someone to find a good school for him, and this time he wrote a letter to talk about going to school. Point: I have already done the work of cars going to school. It is the first national primary school in Galati. I entrusted Lieutenant Colonel Curley to help me with this matter. You can take your son to visit and thank you. Remember not to bring valuable gifts, the usual ones are fine. The Kelly family is a noble who brought them too expensive, but they are seen as outsiders. Just as Mizik was writing the letter, an officer with the rank of lieutenant colonel pushed in. Point: he saw that Mizik was lying on the table writing a letter, and said with a smile, Mizik, you've only been on vacation for less than 2 months, and you miss your family again. Mizik knew who it was without looking up to hear the voice, so he spoke more casually. Point: isn't this the help of Lieutenant Colonel Curley, who was retired before, to find a school for my son? Now that I have found it, I naturally need to thank the other party. Point: this matter is easy to solve. If you are in my hometown, I will help you with 1 sentence. Point: seal the completed letter, Mizik said. That is, who doesn't know that Major Dalton's family is very powerful in Buzor? Point: the one who made fun of him was Lieutenant Colonel Dalton, the cousin of Kirsty. He is now managing the 3rd Regiment together with Mizik, but he is the deputy commander. And Mizik continued to speak after he made fun of him. How's the situation in the battalions? You didn't even let me take a sip of water, so you started asking about the situation of the troops after Lieutenant Colonel Dalton, who was pouring the water himself, laughed and scolded. He still gave a reply. What else can I do? Many soldiers have gone out to relax. The battalion commanders are decompressing the soldiers. After all, this is the first battle of our division, so we can't screw it up. Point: in fact, Lieutenant Colonel Dalton was wrong. This is their 2nd time on the battlefield. However, in the last Soviet-Polish War, their division had no chance to perform. Who told them that the task assigned to them at that time was to protect the transportation line? The cavalry group army that the Soviet army harassed the transportation line was caught by the Armored Brigade and Cavalry Division with a hammer, and they were defeated and fled without even seeing the edge of the transportation line. The 24th Division was disappointed. Point: now it is their division's first battle to face the Soviet army. Can they be careless? Chapter 562 Helmech Conflict 2. Helmech Mountain is located 6 kilometers east of Khmelnyk, which is the dividing line between the 2 countries. On weekdays, the place is sparsely populated. After all, no one wants to be arrested by patrol officers and soldiers for questioning. Point: however, today the mountain is very lively, and thousands of people have made this Helmech Mountain a buzz. They chop down trees and dig ditches, as if they want to live here. That's right. This is the leading force of the 24th Division occupying this mountain, intending to build fortifications on it, and the commander of them is its head. Right now, Mizik is tasking his subordinates in a shack. From the green tree trunks and the still green grass cover on the shack, it can be seen that this shack has only recently been built. The 12 mountain artillery in your artillery battalion needs to be placed in the mountain nest behind the position, which is conducive to providing firepower for the first line positions, while other field artillery can be placed on the back of the mountain. As long as an observation post is arranged on the top of the mountain, it will have the advantage of counter artillery. The engineer company helps you build artillery positions, and we can help you when we're done. Mizik was in the shack, telling his own requirements to the artillery battalion commander who was assigned to him. Behind him, a soldier is hanging a precise map of the area, and on the other side, another officer and soldier is busy laying field telephone lines. The artillery battalion commander, who was listening carefully to Mizik's story, nodded and replied, "No problem, just do as you say." After Mizik sent away the artillery battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Dalton, who was sweating profusely after walking around the position, walked in. Mizik asked quickly, "What was the result of the inspection round?" "Forget it." Lieutenant Colonel Dalton, who was thirsty and took 2 sips of water, sat down and said, "I just went for a walk around. The 1st battalion, that is building the front, is fine. The soil quality there is good, and the tunnel has been built to a height of half a meter. The 2nd battalion on the right is uncomfortable. There is a section below them. Rock, completely repair the troops. Dig hard enough to break a hole in your shovel, and the 2nd battalion commander asked me to tell you, if you can move that section of fortification 200 meters back." Hearing the words of Dalton, the deputy commander, Mizik couldn't help but ask, "Which part is it?" "It's the part of the 5th company of the 2nd battalion. I looked at the terrain, and it just happened to be a lot higher than other places. If you move back 200 meters, it will make this a breakthrough point for the flank, which will give the enemy a favorable opportunity." Hearing Dalton's words, Mizik couldn't sit still. He picked up his military cap and said, "Then I'll go take a look." Mizik came here to observe the 2nd battalion and found that, indeed, as the deputy commander said, this section of the bulge is a tiny mountain bunker, and a soil pit can no longer be dug halfway, and the bottom is full of stones. If it is abandoned here, it will cause great damage to the defense line of the 2nd battalion. Seeing the battalion commander beside him, who was hesitating to speak, Mizik said, "Come to the regiment to pick up some explosives later, and I will ask the engineer company to teach you how to use it and blow it out of a trench." No way. The danger of retreating 200 meters is too great. Only the use of explosives will do. Mizik had to make a choice at this time, and he chose to use the few explosives in the regiment. And his words surprised the 2nd battalion commander. "Using explosives? How much explosives do you need?" "Don't worry about it so much. I'll let you use it. According to my estimation, 100 kilograms of explosives are enough to blow up a line of defense. There is no way, and now I can only use some of the materials in my own reserves." The move of the Romanian army to occupy Helmec Mountain was quickly learned by the Soviet army. There was no way so many people were on Helmec Mountain. When the Soviet patrol discovered Romania's actions, they immediately demanded it to withdraw from the Helmec Mountains. However, the Romanian side, who wanted to find fault, rejected it on the spot. Seeing Romanian people wanting to stay here, the Soviet soldiers immediately retreated. Mizik led someone to witness the withdrawal of the Soviet patrol. Seeing the Soviet troops leaving on horseback, Mizik turned his head and asked Dalton beside him, "See any difference between them? This unit should belong to the border guard of the General Administration of Political Defense of the state. If I'm not bad, it should be attached to the 22nd Tommy Border Guard Corps of the Border Guard." Dalton was right. This was indeed a patrol subordinate to the Tommy Frontier Corps on the 22nd. After the October Revolution, the Russian Border Guard Independent Army, which originally guarded the border, disintegrated and was abolished by the Soviet regime. After the formation of the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army, the task of border guarding was temporarily undertaken by the Red Army. After the Treaty of Brest was signed, the Soviet Russian Revolutionary Military Committee decided to set up two groups of escorts in the north and west, responsible for guarding the western border and performing customs duties at the same time. After the end of the Soviet-Russian Civil War, the Tommy Frontier Corps was established on the 22nd day. Considering the tense relationship with Romania, the Corps has 8 independent border battalions, each of which has 3 companies and attached cavalry detachments, serving as border patrols. Apparently this was one of the company patrols after the patrol captain saw that Romania occupied Mount Helmech with great fanfare and ignored his request. He knew that it was not easy. So after the request was rejected, he immediately reported to his superiors non-stop. So it didn't take long for news of the Romanian provocation to reach Sitomi. The commander of the detachment also knew that this matter should not be neglected and immediately reported the news to the superior. After being passed on layer by layer, the news fell into the hands of Maineski, the director of the General Administration of Political Defense of the State. This Maineski took over from Dzerzhinsky, and this one is also a tough character. The expulsion of Trotsky from the Soviet Union was the act of the General Administration of Political Defense under his leadership. Although it was instructed by Stalin, it can also be seen that Stalin attached great importance to him. In 1927 to 1928, all well-known opposition figures, about 150 people in total, were all expelled from Moscow to remote cities under the supervision of representatives of the General Administration of Political Defense of the State. In addition to this, he has launched several trial cases. Shakhtin case, the case of destructive organization of bourgeois experts in the Shakhtin mining area of Donbass in 1928, a series of cases of industrial party, case of sabotage in the industrial sector in 1930, Party of Working Peasants case, the agricultural sector sabotage case of 1930. This man can be described as unscrupulous and engaging in political struggles. On one occasion, a man approached one of Trotsky's close associates and said he had the means to get an offset scribe to copy their documents for the opposition. But at this moment, people from the Political Security Bureau came to search and determined that the person who came was Rangel's old officer. Therefore, it was announced to the whole country that the opposition was associated with the Belarusian counter-revolutionaries living abroad. Only later did people know that the so-called old officer was a spy sent by the General Administration of Political Defense of the State. Trotsky was subsequently expelled from the Soviet Union under the surveillance of the General Directorate of Political Defense of the State. So, when he got the report of the incident in Romania, he immediately set off for the Kremlin. Now he needs to let the great comrade Stalin decide the attitude towards the Romanians. Chapter 563, Helmech Conflict 3. The 24th Division of the Romanian Army arrived at the border town of Khmelnyk on September 9th, occupied the disputed Khmelnyk Hill on September 12th, and built fortifications on it in an attempt to cause the fact of occupation. The officers and soldiers of our border guard corps, when I tried to prevent its illegal occupation, I was expelled by it. In order to maintain the peace of the region, my border guards had to withdraw with patience. According to our information, the Romanian army currently occupying the area is as many as 1 brigade inside the Kremlin. Maineski, the head of the General Directorate of National Political Defense, is speaking about the Romanian occupation of Mount Helmech. In addition to Stalin, there were also many Soviet military and political leaders. After listening to Maineski's report, Stalin took his world-famous pipe and spoke. "Comrades, talk about it." When his voice fell, many people turned their attention to Voroshilov. Because this is a military matter, it is best for the military chief to answer. I think what Romania is doing at the moment is a test of the great Soviet Union, a reaction of the capitalist society to test our country when it suffers an economic crisis. Like the warlords in the East, it is against the great Soviet. So we can't have any hesitation, must be fought back with the strongest attitude. Without waiting for the two military chiefs to speak, Molotov, who is currently the chairman of the People's Committee, stood up and took the lead in expressing his attitude. In addition to making him do this, because the Soviet Union could not give in, there was also his own speculation about Stalin's mind. After Molotov spoke, Voroshilov, who served as the People's Commissar of the Navy and Army, also spoke. Yes, we have to fight back severely against the provocations of the Eastern warlords, and the provocations of the Western Romanians are no exception. Otherwise, the external environment of the Soviet Union will become even worse. Because of this tolerance point, others also spoke up. After seeing 2 consecutive Stalin cronies express their attitudes, the Soviet Union can't do anything to back down. Otherwise these countries that are hostile to the Soviet Union will swarm and target the Soviet Union one after another. Yes, these Romanians must be given a taste of the Soviet iron fist point. Last time the Soviet Union's concession to Romania for peace made them feel that they could violate the interests of the Soviet Union. They were wrong to think so. This time, they must taste the power of the Soviet Union point. After everyone had spoken, Stalin spoke. The matter about the provocation by the Romanians will be handed over to the Kiev military region. I believe they will give a satisfactory answer to the central government. In addition, the 5-year plan cannot be affected by this matter, and we must make every effort to ensure that the plan is effectively implemented. As Stalin made his final decision, the Soviet Union also responded to the Romanian provocation. As the direct executor, the Kiev military region naturally does not dare to slack off. Therefore, when the order came to the Kiev military region, Commander Timoshenko naturally did not dare to neglect. Brother Timoshenko has been a prosperous official in recent years. As the original officer of the 1st Cavalry Army with a special status, Timoshenko was of course well aware that he was promoted so quickly. Therefore, he did not dare to slack off on orders from Moscow. And when the border guard corps discovered Romania's move, how could the Kiev military region, which controls Ukraine's military intelligence, not know it? But it has not yet received an order from the superior, so it cannot act rashly. So after the Moscow order was issued, Timoshenko looked at the telegram and turned his head to instruct. Immediately, in accordance with the predetermined plan, order the various departments to rush to Helmek Mountain before the 15th, and the combat command of the 15th Army's Comrade Solnov is in charge. At the same time, the other departments are ordered to start patrolling the border area to prevent the possibility of Romanians' provocation. When Brother Timoshenko said this, after thinking about it, he added another sentence. In the event of provocation by the Romanians, a severe counterattack can be given. Following Timoshenko's order, the pre-prepared troops immediately put on their already prepared luggage and marched in a line singing revolutionary songs to the reserved location. And behind them is the figure of the god of war artillery, as if to declare the greatness of the Soviet Union. And Major General Solnov, the commander of this battle, who was accepted by Timoshenko, was also ready to set off. However, as a major general, he has many colleagues, so he is making his final farewell. Comrade Solnov, I wish you an early return from the victory. These people who saw him off were basically comrades from the 15th Army, and the figure of the 15th Army commander and political commissar was also among them. Facing the comrades who saw him off, Solnov, who served as the deputy commander, could only speak. Thank you for your concern for me. This time, I will definitely live up to the expectations of Comrade Commander and everyone. Everything is for the Soviets. After speaking, Solnov turned on his horse and led the guards towards Helmek Mountain. He will join the 24th Division and the officers and soldiers of the Independent Artillery Brigade on the road to jointly complete the tasks assigned by the superiors. The move of the Soviet troops was soon discovered by the Romanian side, which was closely watching its movements. After learning of the news that the Soviet Union had dispatched troops, the Chief of the General Staff, Admiral Ploiesti, immediately ordered, send a report to the troops on the border of West Ukraine, asking them to be more vigilant. For the Soviet troops that appear around Mount Helmek, they need to make a precautionary record and ask them to show our attitude towards their possible provocative actions. In addition, send a report to Major General Solder, telling him that this battle is very important to Romania and him, and I hope he can play Romania's prestige. After giving the order, Admiral Ploiesti paid attention to the military map hanging behind him. This map is marked with dense military markings. These marks are all the troops of the 2 countries, and the marks here are more dense around Helmek. Hopefully this battle can achieve its purpose. Admiral Ploiesti looked at the map and said to himself. He also saw the growth of the Soviet military power over the years, and many technical arms were established during this period. Moreover, the Soviet Union is not only chasing the technical arms established by other countries, but also exploring new arms that have never appeared before, such as the paratroopers, which the Soviet Union first established. Although the military strength of the Soviet Union has been continuously renovated over the years, Romania is not bad, or even stronger. Don't take me for granted. After military cooperation with Germany and Italy, Romania's strength is also not what it used to be. And this time let the Soviet Union know Romania's strength once again. When the Soviet army began to prepare for the attack, the Soviet Union was not idle in its diplomacy, and a tough statement was handed to Romania. The above requires Romania to withdraw troops that cross the border within 24 hours. Otherwise it will take necessary measures. This declaration was rejected by Romania without exception, and stated that Romania did not cross the border, that Mount Helmech belonged to Romania, and that the Soviet Union's request was vexatious. Since neither of the two sides persuaded the other, it was necessary to convince people with physical reasoning, so Helmech became the place for the two sides to compete. Chapter 564 Helmech Conflict 4. Machine guns, mortars knock him out. In front of the Helmech mountain position, a Soviet company commander with a face full of gunpowder was directing the soldiers to fight. In front of his attack, a Maxim heavy machine gun became his obstacle. Following his orders, two soldiers rushed over from behind. One of them came with a 60mm mortar, and the other came with 2 boxes of shells. This 60mm mortar is very familiar to the company commander, which was specially assigned to their company by the battalion commander. This mortar prototype is a Stoke 3-inch mortar, which was also originally developed for attacking enemies sheltering in trenches. Its advantages, that it can attack in twists and turns, and the range is not close to the maximum range of 1000 meters. In addition, its total weight is only 197, which can be carried away by one person, so this mortar has been imitated by many countries. The Soviet Union's 60 mortar also inherited these advantages, with a total gun weight of 189, a high and low range of 45, a shell weight of 133, a maximum muzzle velocity of 158, and a maximum range of 1050 meters. Suitable for suppressive attacks on trenches and machine guns. So I saw the two soldiers set up the mortar, and after adjusting the angle, 3 consecutive shells attacked the heavy machine gun, and the roadblock was misfired, and the company commander immediately shouted, "Comrades, attack!" The soldiers, who were suppressed by machine guns and Twassen 3s, immediately relaunched the attack. This Soviet attack was also seen by Mizik, who was defending the position. However, he is not worried about this at all, because his troops also have 60 mortars, and even better 80 and 120 mortars. Of course, one of the two is in the hands of the battalion commander, and the other is in his own hands. Sure enough, the position immediately responded to the 60 mortar. I only saw several consecutive explosions around the mortar, and the mortar never rang again. The Soviet attack was quickly repelled by Romania. Looking at the retreating Soviet army, the soldiers on the position cheered. Not only are they cheering for defeating the enemy, but they are cheering for their own survival. Only on the battlefield can people know the value of life and make people cherish it. At this time, Misk suddenly asked a topic that had nothing to do with the current battlefield situation. Dalton, although this Soviet attack was repelled by us, we also need to see their progress. Dalton, who also observed the battle, said with a sigh, "That's right, I remember that, when we fought against him in 2019, these Soviet troops didn't have any other tactics, except high fighting spirit, just a single-headed charge. It was the same, and our firepower at that time made these Soviets suffer. And when the Soviet Union attacked Poland, these Soviet troops already had some simple tactics, although it seemed a little ridiculous to us at the time. And now." Dalton pointed to the battlefield and said, "The tactical movements have been done very proficiently, and the coordination is also very tacit. It can be seen that they have worked hard in military training." Listening to Dalton's words, Misk also sighed. "This is what scares me. These Soviet troops are growing rapidly, and with their high morale, they will definitely be the biggest threat to our country. So in order to ensure that our country can deal with the threat of the Soviet Union, we do not need to in order to deal with the biggest enemy of the Soviet Union. We must increase the training of the troops and at the same time find ways to use new equipment and technologies to practice new tactics. After all, this country is too big, has many resources, and has a large population. We don't want other methods. It has the strength to fight against it. Misk's words were also what he thought in his heart. As he gradually rose to the middle and higher levels, the level of seeing problems became higher. Many times, I started to think about the problem from a global perspective, which made me start to like reading books, and his words also attracted doubt and surprise. I didn't want Misk to see that the problem had risen to this level. It seemed that he was appointed as his deputy, and it was indeed a problem of his own incompetence. While the two Romanian officers were discussing the terrible speed at which the Soviet army was growing within the Soviet command, Major General Salonov was also angry at the failure of the attack. Damn it, just this casualty retreated. Their performance this time has brought shame to the Soviet Union. Major General Solonov's words made Andreev, the commander of the 24th Division, feel a little poor, and he couldn't help defending his subordinates. Our fighters have worked hard enough. You have to see that the terrain is quite unfavorable for us to attack. The swamp formed by the overflowing water of the Doron River on the left is blocked by the high ground on the right. Only the front is available for us to attack. And with a frontal width of 23 kilometers, only one regiment of troops can be attacked at most at a time. When the troops are not dominant, and the equipment is not dominant, we are tied. How to fight the enemy. Salonov is also very clear about Andreev's complaints, but he can't complain like this, teacher. Because this is an order from Moscow, it is not something he can go against to limit the conflict to Helmek. Andreev can say that, because he's not the commander. It doesn't matter what he says, he can't. So he could only continue talking. I know the current difficulties, but this cannot be the reason for our complaints. The central government has its own considerations in doing so, and this is not something we can dictate. We can only think of ways, based on the existing conditions. This is an excellent commander. What the officer should do. So I decided to have the artillery brigade shell its position for 3 hours, and I want these Romanians to have no reliable fortifications to rely on. After Salonov finished talking about the arrangement for the artillery brigade, he continued to Andreev. Then your divisions attacked non-stop. One regiment retreated, and the other took over. I don't believe these Romanians are made of iron. I'm going to break the string that is holding them tight. Andreev was taken aback when he heard Solonov's intention to go all alone. He couldn't help but say, this will cause my 24th Division to suffer too many casualties, perhaps considering that some people said that he was greedy for life and fear of death. Andreev started from another aspect. I'm not afraid of taking casualties, but in this case, our two flanks will have no protection. To know that the other side still has enough troops, as long as one flank attacks us, the whole line will collapse. You don't have to worry about that. Salonov wasn't worried about this, he just said it. I have sent a telegram to the commander, Comrade Timoshenko. Report to him about the difficulties we have encountered and request reinforcement. He has agreed to our request for the nearest 63rd and 104th Divisions to help us stay on the flanks. They'll reach our flanks tomorrow, and then we'll be able to start our full attack. Chapter 565 Helmek Conflict End. Before dawn the next day, in the rear artillery positions, the Soviet artillerymen were preparing for the battle. Hurry up and push this cart away. There can be no other obstructions on the position. A Soviet artillery officer is directing the soldiers to prepare for the battle. This time their artillery mission is very important. In addition to launching artillery fire on the ground, they also need to suppress the Romanians' artillery. However, despite such a heavy task, the artillery brigade still has enough confidence. And their confidence comes from the hundreds of medium and large caliber artillery of more than 100 mm in the artillery brigade. As the only artillery brigade of the Kiev military district and even the Soviet Union, its role is mainly set up to target Romania, which is the most threatening to it. The independent artillery brigade is equipped with a large number of 107,122,152 three types of artillery, of which the 1910 style 122mm howitzer is its most important equipment. Its total weight of 1,330 kilograms is quite suitable for Soviet roads, and its power is also good. As the main artillery of Tsarist Russia during World War I, its range of 7,700 meters is also up to the standard point, so, when it was torn, the artillery of dozens of positions of the artillery brigade rang in unison, giving the defending Romanian army a big surprise point. The violent shelling of the 3 medium and large artillery pieces caused Mount Helmech to fall into a sea of fire, and many fortifications on the position were destroyed. As the commander of the position, Misk didn't have time to organize his clothes and immediately rushed to his post to check the damage caused by the shelling. I didn't expect that the artillery shelling of the Soviet army would be so violent, and its shelling level is quite high, and many ground fortifications have been devastated. In Misk's eyes, many positions were shrouded in shelling, and from time to time various weapon parts were thrown into the air. He even saw that a 75 mountain gun was directly hit by the artillery, and it immediately became torn apart. The deformed gun barrel flew into the air and smashed on the soldier he couldn't avoid. The poor soldier saw God immediately. Seeing the tragic image of the position, Misk immediately vented his dissatisfaction. "Where's our artillery? Why don't we fight back?" As if waiting for his urging, the sound of counter-attacking artillery rumbled over the mountain, and the artillery of the two sides exchanged fire across Helmech Mountain Point. Although the Soviet army has the advantage of caliber, Romania is not bad. They have the advantage of high ground. The artillery observation posts located on the hilltop continuously send the observation information to the artillery positions, which also allows the Romanian artillery to rely on accurate artillery fire. It is comparable to the Soviet army playing a drum. In particular, the new 105 howitzer can almost be called a cannon, although the cost is 60 more expensive than the old one. However, it performed exceptionally well in this artillery battle. With its ultra-long range and fierce firepower, it also maximizes the suppression ability of its artillery. And the Soviet artillery, who had a great time fighting with the Romanian artillery, naturally lowered their shelling intensity to the position by a grade point. Although both the Romanian 24th Division called the 24th Division Artillery to resist the offensive of the Soviet artillery, but a helping hand still appeared. Support from the heavy artillery regiment soon joined the chorus, and the deterrent effect of these 150 heavy artillery can far exceed the artillery of the 24th Division itself. Although there was only one battalion of 12 heavy artillery support, it still gave the Romanian artillery an advantage. Many Soviet artillerymen had to face a cycle of discovery, shelling, and relocation, which aggravated the disadvantage of the Soviet artillery. Seeing that the artillery could not open the situation, Major General Salonov, the Soviet commander, had to let the soldiers attack in advance. So under his order, waves of Soviet soldiers attacked the position. Suppressive light machine gun fire. These Soviets are dying. An officer on the position looked at the densely charged Soviet soldiers, and without waiting for the enemy to enter the best range, he immediately ordered the machine gun loudly to suppress the opponent's offensive. As for why the heavy machine guns with better suppression were not fired, you can see the heavy machine guns scattered into parts and the shooters who fell next to the heavy machine guns. In fact, he was not the only one who issued such an order. Almost the entire line of defense basically did this. So when the Soviet soldiers were still some distance away, the Romanian positions on the position were full of fire, and everyone knew that this was the real deal this time. Of course, if Romania performed like this yesterday, Salonov would be very satisfied, because this exposed all the firepower of the position. But today is the general attack launched, and he has already opened the bow, and has no turning back. So he can only increase the investment in troops. The fierce attack caused the ammunition of the position to be consumed very quickly, especially the machine gun ammunition. So when the battle is at its most intense, you can see a spectacle, that is, after each machine gun position, there are many people squatting pressing the magazine, which is the result of the machine gun shooting too fast. There are even examples of the cooling water being burnt out and having to pee to cool down. Although the soldiers on the position resisted very stubbornly, this time the Soviet army was almost overwhelmed by the entire division. After one regiment was defeated, the other was on the top, giving the Romanian soldiers no chance to rest at all. So after 2 hours of desperate attack, the Soviet soldiers finally took the position point from a one-point breakthrough to a multifaceted breakthrough. Mizik's carefully designed first-line positions were thus captured by the Soviet Army's offensive without recording casualties, and Reeve, who was in charge of commanding the Soviet offensive, looked at the Romanian army who had retreated to the second line position, and immediately ordered without waiting for the soldiers to rest. Continue to attack. We want to capture Helmech Mountain in one breath. So the Soviet army, which did not give itself a rest, did not give the defeated Romanian army a chance, and continued to attack the second line positions. As the position commander, Mizik immediately sent reinforcement to the second line position. After seeing the situation of the Soviet army, the battle between the two sides around the second line positions broke out immediately. After sending reinforcement, Mizik did not hesitate and immediately picked up the phone. He wanted reinforcement now. Commander, now the Soviet offensive is too fierce. We need reinforcement. The voice of the division commander, Major General Solder, came through the microphone. Now hold on for a while. I was attacked by 2 enemy divisions on my side, and now I can't get any troops to help you. Who can tell me why the reinforcement from the enemy appeared from where? It was clear that the last sentence Major General Zelda was mad at the others, and Mizik ignored the teacher's anger at others, and could only beg. Master, if you don't send reinforcement, our position is likely to fall. The Soviet troops who attacked the position this time are fighting for their lives. We have caused more than 30 casualties to them, but these people still don't take a step back. Send me some reinforcement. At least let the soldiers see hope. You know the consequences of not seeing hope on the battlefield. After a long silence over the microphone, he said, I can only send you 1 company of troops. If you need reinforcement, then I will be the only one. Thank you, teacher. For Mizik now, it is also good to reinforce a company of troops. After putting down the phone, he ordered, gather all the current non-combatants, give them weapons, and let them go to the third line positions. Then let all the lightly wounded go to the third line positions, as long as they can carry guns. Deputy Head Dalton said hesitantly, is this too much? If the second line position is lost, both you and I need to go to the position. Mizik, who checked with a gun, answered him without raising his head. Now Mizik is also ready to die. Don't think that the Soviet army dares. Chapter 566 Luosu Local War 1. Romania's conflict with Soviet Helmech was irrelevant to the rest of Europe. Although many newspapers are concerned that this may lead to a peaceful environment in Europe, this is only a matter of civil discourse. However, when the two sides began to gather their troops, there was a possibility of a battle. The attitudes of various countries have begun to change, and many countries have begun to express their stance to restrain the two sides. Most of them are small and medium-sized countries. They are afraid that this will cause regional turmoil and affect the stability of their own countries in terms of big powers. The attitude has become a bit playful. Among them, Italy is the most staunch supporter of Romania, and its Prime Minister Musoneri made a public statement condemning the Soviet Union's provocative actions against Romania. In addition, in order to express its support, the Italian government also supported a batch of arms to Romania. Although these arms are not of the same caliber, Romania cannot use them, but it can still be seen that this is Italy's intention. The United Kingdom and France only verbally condemned the Soviet Union and called for a peaceful attitude. As for resistance, there was no such thing. As for Germany, there is not even a single word of condemnation, only a call for peace. As for the Polish side, which formed a de facto anti-Soviet alliance with Romania, the situation was different. First of all, Poland is very wary of the Soviet Union, but Piłsudski, who currently holds power in Poland, is also implementing a policy of reconciliation with the two countries. Because the ruler who is in power in Poland knows that although Poland and France have signed a treaty of friendship and mutual assistance, the establishment of Poland is actually harming the interests of Germany and the Soviet Union, so he actively promotes reconciliation with the two countries. Basically, Poland's position at this time is neutral. However, although he is promoting reconciliation with the two countries, he also notes that Poland needs its own strength. In addition, it is also necessary to have good relations with other neighboring countries, among which the relationship with Romania has also become the most important point. So, when Piłsudski received a telegram from Romania asking Poland to gather troops for military exercises on the Soviet border, he was a little embarrassed. Because Romania is very important to Poland, and its own reconciliation with the Soviet Union is also very important. Now Romania's request is completely contrary to his own intentions, which makes him very embarrassed. Also embarrassed are other Polish military and political officials, because this is not only a modification of Poland's foreign policy, but it will further deteriorate Poland's relations with the Soviet Union. But if Romania's request is rejected, the relations between the two countries will be rapidly estranged. In the end, Piłsudski decided to let the Polish army gather on the Soviet border, and the reason was to use the army to adjust. As for military exercises, forget it. This not only agreed to Romania's request, but also tried not to offend the Soviet Union. Therefore, when the conflict between Romania and the Soviet Union escalated, Poland also mobilized a large number of troops to the border with the Soviet Union. Poland's position of innocence. Edel also hinted that he knew it well. It is also acceptable for him to let Poland gather its troops on the border. After all, Poland and Romania have not reached the level of wearing a pair of trousers. This has been satisfied. As for the request for the military exercise, he was just testing Poland's attitude. Now the most important thing is Romania itself to fight this battle well. Who would have thought that this provocation would lead to such a result? But it is too late to say anything now. It is time to see if Romania's military power has improved over the years. At a time when the outside world was talking about this, as the commander this time, Admiral Mandev was busy in his headquarters. Where is the 4th Heavy Artillery Regiment? It's almost time to arrive in Odessa, and the head of the regiment, Colonel Doka, sent a telegram, and the arrival time will not be delayed. After hearing the staff officer's answer, Admiral Mandev continued to observe the map and asked, "Then how about the transportation of goods?" Major General Tours, who is in charge of transportation scheduling, reported that the transportation of personnel and materials is normal at present. The problem of 2 trains being blocked due to failures has been resolved. He has requisitioned 2 more locomotives from the railway department. This is no longer the case, and he also scattered the spare locomotives at various stations, and whenever there is a train failure, he will immediately send a spare locomotive to pull it away. Okay, I got it. Anything else? And that's all. After the staff reported by Admiral Mandev was sent away, he continued to observe the combat map. This is marked with the current positions of the divisions and the route they are traveling. If this map is seen by the Soviets, they can rely on them to know the location, strength, equipment and other information of the offensive. However, a map like this, that shows various information about the army, does not exceed 3 points in Romania, and one of them is in the general staff. One is in front of the Palace Edel, and the other is with him. Once a unit arrives at a location, it will report to it, and the staff will remark its location on the map. However, Admiral Mandev has already kept this in mind, and he continued to look at the map just to deepen his impression, and there were also ideas that inspired him. For Mandev, this is the first time that he can independently command a large-scale battle of more than 100,000 people. Before, the scale was not only tens of thousands, but it was a deputy to others. Especially before that, he didn't have the illustrious feats to convince the public, which made him feel heavy pressure. Although he worked hard in the position of the Director of Education, the military is the place that pays the most attention to military exploits, and Admiral Fried also understands his situation. Otherwise, if it is safer, he will be convincing to command the battle. So for Mandev, this battle is not to be missed, so he has to personally take care of many things. Just as he was sighing, a report interrupted him. What's up? Admiral Mandev asked about the incoming staff. We have just received an intelligence that the Soviet Union has dispatched troops from Most to reinforce Kiev. These troops are currently only 500 kilometers away from Kiev. After hearing the report of the staff officer, Mandev took the telegram and read it himself. The telegram came from a Romanian agent lurking in the Soviet railway department. It said that they were required to do a good job in railway control, and that all passenger and freight trains departing from Kyiv on the 14th and 15th were required to suspend transportation, and the station was also asked to prepare hot water and food. And the agent also inquired that it was a direct train from Moscow. Combined with the current situation in the Soviet Union and Romania, he is sure that this is a train for transporting troops. The arrival of these Soviet troops is very threatening to Romania. So he risked being discovered and sent the telegram back. The Romanian intelligence service also attached great importance to this and immediately sent it to the military. As a frontline commander, Admiral Mandiv naturally has the right to know at the first time. And this news really surprised Admiral Mandiv. If he didn't know the arrival of this group of troops, it would be a great threat to the next battle point. So he said immediately, send a report to the intelligence services and ask them to find out the numbers of these incoming troops. Mandiv then went on to preach, call the combat staff immediately and prepare to change the plan. He intends to make a new plan to take these troops into account. It must not be allowed to disrupt Romania's operational deployment. Following Mandiv's order, the headquarters was busy again. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567 Luosu Local War 2. While Romania was busy with reinforcement about to arrive in Kyiv, Timoshenko had arrived at the new headquarters, Alexandria. Here he would direct the Soviet counterattack against Romania. The transfer of the command is very troublesome, and there are too many items and documents to be transferred. Of course, just the transfer of the combat command is not so troublesome, but it is not easy. This is not the time. When Timoshenko walked into the headquarters, there were still many officers and soldiers busy with the relocation of items. Naturally, he doesn't need to worry about these things, and the officers below will take care of them. By the way, when will the 9th and 17th armies of Moscow's reinforcement arrive? As soon as Timoshenko entered the door, he asked about his reinforcement. They are expected to arrive on the 1415th, and Kyiv is now ready. As soon as they arrive, they will take over the 19 Corps guarding Shepatovka and the 23 Corps in Zhytomyr. This way we can use the combat troops will have a strength of 1.78 million. If we add the equipment supported by Moscow, we will have a huge strike force of 947 artillery pieces. Enough to fight Romania well. The words of his chief of staff did not make Timoshenko smile. I saw that his face was still silent. This battle is not easy to fight. We have fought against the Romanians for many years, and you know their strength. Since they provoked disputes this time, they must have their backing. Although our strength has grown well in recent years, we still cannot only to catch up. Comrade Salnov sent me a telegram in the morning, saying that they used a division to attack the Helmek mountain, where a regiment was stationed, and still failed to capture there. Although the defenders were severely damaged, the 24th Division suffered casualties. Too big to fight anymore. He begged to give him some time. Brother Timoshenko's words made the silent political commissar's expression a little more exciting. I remember Salnov's ability is good. How could it be like this? I have read the combat report he sent, and there were no mistakes in combat. It's just that the tenacity of the enemy exceeded his expectations. Brother Timoshenko defended his subordinates by saying that this subordinate has good abilities, and he did not want him to leave a bad impression on the political commissar. I agree to his request, but according to the information we have learned, he may not be able to fight there. The enemy has increased troops. The chief of staff responded immediately. Yes, the enemy has increased the strength of a division, which has dashed my hope of solving Helmek first. However, there is at most a military level battle, and the most important thing is our side. Only our side can fight well. Only then will Moscow be satisfied. Both the chief of staff and the political commissar understood the intention of Timoshenko's words, and the point was to satisfy Moscow. Don't look at the fact that the Soviet Union currently has more than 1 million troops. However, the vast territory has scattered troops, specific to each military region. At present, the Kyiv military region has taken the throne of the largest military region of the Soviet Union with an army of up to 280,000. At present, this battle is already the limit of the forces that Kiev can use. So that's why Timoshenko said, so point although it can be mobilized, and with the advantage of the Soviet Union's manpower, the Soviet Union can easily provide 5 or 6 million troops. Regardless of the quality of such troops, the number alone will make many countries desperate. However, the theme of the Soviet Union now is economic construction. If the economic construction is disturbed, no one will have good fruit to eat. After talking about the topic of bearing weight, several people were not interested in continuing to talk. As time passed, both Sueluo and Sueluo were stepping up their formation. Because of the terrain, the two sides can only solve the opponent through mobile warfare. The Soviet Union relied on its troops and artillery. The Romanian side relied on aircraft and the 1st Armored Division. Although the Soviet Union now has its own aviation industry, most of the aircraft used are old-fashioned World War I aircraft, and the latest model is only the Iraq 5 and Iraq 6 aircraft that have improved World War I at present. Under the personal attention of Edel, the Romanian aviation industry has introduced a lot of technologies and ideas from Germany and Italy, and its latest 3 Albatros fighter jet has reached a speed of 440 km per hour. Its limit elevation has also reached 10,500 meters, but it is one of the best fighter jets in the world. And the Soviet Union Iraq 5 Iraq 6 is not the opponent of the Albatros, not to mention the 1st Armored Division. As Romania's most lethal fist, the 1st Armored Division has 224 tanks. There are 78 wheeled armored vehicles, and thousands of vehicles are responsible for tasks such as soldier transportation and replenishment. Moreover, the 1st Armored Division should creatively dismantle the turret of the decommissioned Jackal 3 tank and install artillery as a mobile suppressive weapon with the army. Such a move has made the maintenance team of the 1st Armored Division more powerful, and naturally its combat effectiveness has also been sublimated. As the division commander, Lieutenant General Hoffman even had the confidence to defeat the interception of the 3 Soviet divisions, because they had never encountered so many tank attacks again. Since the 1st Armored Division has such a powerful combat capability, how could Admiral Mandev let it idle? Naturally, it will be inserted into the enemy's ribs as the point of a Romanian knife. Therefore, when Lieutenant General Hoffman arrived, he personally invited him to the headquarters to explain the task of the Armored Division to him. The task of your 1st Armored Division is to break through the enemy's line of defense from the Ukrainian Kardhir and march to Kirovograd. I will photograph the 1st Cavalry Division to travel with you. Hoffman looked at the distance from Ukraine Kard to Kirovograd on the map and couldn't help but say, I know the 1st Cavalry Division, but can they keep up with our speed? Hoffman also has his own reasons for asking this, because currently the 1st Armored Division can travel hundreds of kilometers a day, and such a speed is far from the Cavalry Division. Although a horse can run 20 kilometers in an hour, it sounds like it only takes 5 or 6 hours to get there. But tens of thousands of horses can't be counted like this, and there are other equipment. It's like a soldier can travel 15 kilometers in an hour, but an infantry division can travel 30 kilometers a day. Even if the movement speed is very powerful, it is mainly based on the speed of the equipment. If a soldier walks with a gun on his back, there is no combat effectiveness. Not to mention the influence of the terrain on the travel, and if there is a battle on the way, the speed will not be improved. However, Hoffman's words made Admiral Mandev unable to help. The Cavalry Division is the fastest unit, except your Armored Division. Facing the doubts in Admiral Mandev's words, Hoffman said confidently, I have a way. You say. Put the cars together for a division to follow behind our Armored Division. How many trucks will it take? 1, 200 trucks is enough. And according to the intelligence, the Soviets built a combat-ready road from Ukraine to Kirovograd, and they can take on so many vehicles and tanks. Anyway, we don't have to worry about the Soviets' road damage problem. It seems that you have planned this for a long time. No, I'm just making up my mind. We tried this kind of march in the Armored Division before. Hoffman's words made Mandev think for a while, and finally nodded. Then it's up to you. In a few words between the two, Romania's main attack direction was decided. Chapter 568 Luosu Local Conflict 3. Conflicts in Rosu have dwindled over time, and the gunfire on the border has gradually subsided. but both parties knew that this was just the last calm before the storm. And Lurkov, one of the Ukrainian car defenders, can also feel this. However, as an honorable soldier in the Soviet army, Lurkov had the duty and responsibility to guard the country. So today, his company will be the guardian of the Soviet defense, defending the front lines. The position is located just behind the border and is part of the Ukrainian defense. After the clashes broke out in Helmek, his 35th Division spent 3 days fortifying. The entire position is composed of 3 lines of defense, distributed around the Ukrainian card, to protect the border town. And his company's turn is today's guard duty, so Lurkov is on duty at Sentinel number 3 with a weapon. Post number 3 is located close to the borderline west of Ukraine car. There is an open area here, and as long as you stand on the outpost, you can monitor the entire area. It is also at the first level of the border, especially when the war is clouded, and it is necessary to have someone here to observe the Romanian side at any time. However, there are times when observing trends is boring, and Lurkov's comrades can't help but say, "Lurkov, when did we Romanians fight? It's too uncomfortable to be so tense all the time. How do I know this? It is estimated that the superior will inform you when the time comes. These Romanians are so nasty. I will let them know how good I'm with the gun in my hand. Can you be quiet, Sukov, and listen to Father Mosov in the company saying that these Romanians are very powerful. Be careful to watch the movements around you. Don't be touched by them." Lurkov's words made Sukov pursed his lips, and he said disdainfully, "That old guy knew that he boasted that he had fought the White Bandit army before, or that he was afraid of it because he was injured in the battle with the Romanians. Besides, we have developed so fast in recent years, and we have not been what we used to be. I'm not afraid. What about those Romanians? And these hateful Romanians still occupy so much of our territory. If the government hadn't been out of peace, they would have killed them. These Romanians don't know how to be grateful and dare to provoke the Soviets. Wait for me." Lurkov suddenly interrupted the chatter of his comrades. "What's the matter, Lurkov?" Lurkov said seriously. "Listen carefully. Is there any sound? Where did the sound come from? Do not talk." Trying to listen carefully, Sukov heard a faint rumbling sound at this time. "It's kind of like the sound of a tractor. I can't hear it clearly." "I heard it too." "Go and report to the platoon leader." Sukov, who did not dare to neglect, crawled off the post. Lurkov, who was on duty at the sentry, opened his eyes wide and looked in the direction of the sound. But because the weather was not good, he couldn't see what was coming from. After a while, their platoon commander, Bikonov, went to the post with his binoculars, and it was obvious that Sukov had informed him. And the pair of binoculars in his hand is not a sign to him, but the standard configuration of the sentry. Whoever is on duty can use it. Which direction did it come from? The platoon leader didn't talk nonsense when he came up and asked Lurkov directly. Lurkov said with his finger pointing in the direction from which the voice came, "It's here." And Lurkov's words made Bikonov, the platoon leader, stunned. "This direction is in Romania." He quickly raised the telescope in his hand and began to observe the movement in this direction. In the end, it is the convenience of the telescope. Lurkov can't see the situation here, which is different in the eyes of the platoon leader Bikonov. He saw a group of tanks and armored vehicles driving towards this side. Depending on the situation, these Romanians are going to call. No, the enemy is coming. After Bikonov gave a secret cry, he immediately shouted at the bottom, "Hurry up and call the Ukrainian card. The enemy is coming." There are hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles. There is a direct telephone line to the Ukrainian card in the outpost, which is also to transmit military information in a timely manner. And after the call was over, Bikonov immediately retreated to the rear with his platoon. The role of the sentry is to play an early warning role. And combat is not its requirement, so there is nothing wrong with the orders of the platoon leader Bikonov. When Bikonov retreated with his own people, a large command vehicle followed behind the tank armored vehicle they found. In this command vehicle, Lieutenant General Hoffman was talking with a German officer Major Guderian. "I think you have something to say to me before. Are you wondering about my attack?" "Yes, General. This attack without artillery preparations reduces the intensity of the attack." "That's right. Lieutenant Colonel Guderian is the one who will shock the world in the future. Now he's preaching his mechanized concept, the new idea that tanks will dominate the ground battlefield. However, unlike history, Romania is currently ahead of Germany in the use of tanks. Hoffmann formed the world's first armored division, which made Guderian very interested in Romania. So in 1929, Guderian successfully applied to become an exchange officer and came to Romania for military exchange. And he succeeded in attracting Hoffmann's attention with his insights into the use of his tanks, so he asked it to the armored division for further communication. Of course, during this period, the still inexperienced Guderian learned a lot from Hoffmann, and his sometimes unique speeches can also inspire Hoffmann's use of armored forces. The two of them were brilliant in the armored division. There are even rumors that this Lieutenant Colonel Guderian can fully play the role of deputy commander, because Lieutenant General Hoffmann trusts him very much. And this time the offensive against the Soviet Union, Hoffmann took it with him. So in the face of Guderian's inquiry, Hoffmann explained his arrangement. You're right, it is indeed against common sense to attack without artillery. But what is our mission this time? In the end, it is worthy of Guderian, and it is clear at one point. It's speed. The mission this time is to quickly break the line of defense of the 35th Division of the Soviet Army garrisoned in Ukraine. According to the previous tactical arrangement, the artillery attack would have taken at least several hours, but this time the artillery attack was cancelled. The main force broke through the enemy's position. Hoffmann was very satisfied with Guderian's answer. And we are not without artillery. The Jackal self-propelled artillery can do this, and it can keep up with our speed. Chapter 569 Luosu Local War 4. The Jackal self-propelled artillery converted from the Jackal 3 tank has indeed solved the artillery problem of the armored division. After the turret is removed, these self-propelled artillery are equipped with a 10,524 gun, which can provide support for the armored division at any time. It can be said that the problem that has plagued Hoffmann for a long time has been solved, which is why he has the confidence not to launch the shelling first. Of course, in addition to the weapons and equipment that the armored division Bunsen brought, he also had other support. While the two were talking, the group of planes whizzed past them. The latest Albatros fighters have turned the skies into Romanian territory, followed by Romanian bombers of all kinds. They will be the first to clear the way for troops on the ground. The large-scale tank and armored group cooperated with the roaring planes, making Guderian shout in his heart, "This is exactly the result I want, and I must bring this combat mode back to Germany." The attack of the Romanian troops of the brigade also made Dobrev, the 35th Division commander stationed in Ukraine, feel the pressure. Yes, Commander. We will stop the enemy in Ukrainian card, and we will not let a single enemy go. But this time the Romanians are coming, and we need support. Master Dobrev put down the phone in his hand, and the political commissar beside him immediately asked, "What did the commander say?" "The commander told us to hold on and wait for reinforcement. We will have reinforcement tomorrow. But before that, we need to block the enemy's offensive." While the two were talking, a loud shout came from outside. "Be careful, enemy planes are coming." The two quickly stepped out of the headquarters and found a large number of Romanian fighter jets rushing towards this side. "Hurry up and hide." "What about the anti-aircraft guns?" While Dobrev was speaking, the anti-aircraft guns of the division's air defense company opened fire. However, a small number of anti-aircraft guns were of no use. I saw that more than 10 bombers were separated from the enemy planes and rushed towards the air defense positions. They planned to teach a lesson about this small resistance. Let's go to the bomb shelter first. Dobrev took the political commissar and ran directly to the dugout. Now is not the time to be a hero. If the two of them have an accident, it will have a huge impact on the next battle of the 35th Division. And the comrades of the political commissar who know this will naturally not be able to act. When the two of them ran to the air raid shelter, they heard several explosions, and the air raid position that had been making noises went silent. Oops, before Dobrev could express his thoughts, more Romanian bombers swooped down. At this time, explosions were heard everywhere in Ukraine, and bombings were everywhere. Even the headquarters was hit by several aerial bombs, and now there is basically no one to be seen on the street. This kind of aerial bombardment is the most demoralizing, because you have no way to fight back against your opponent. You can only watch your opponent swept over your head. The one who led the bombing mission this time was Colonel Irascu, the veteran of the Romanian Army Aviation, and now the Commander-in-Chief of the 1st Aviation. And this bombing operation is under his command. I saw him calmly giving orders in the air. The 3rd Bomber Group, you go to bomb the enemy positions on the right. The 2nd Bomber Group, you go to bomb the enemy positions on the left. The 1st Bomber Group, just bomb the Ukrainian card. Be quick. I estimate that the enemy planes take up to 20 minutes arrive. 3rd Bomber Group, received. 2nd Bomber Group, received. 1st Bomber Group, received. I saw 3 flares appeared in the sky, and the pilots of the 3 bomber battalions rushed to their respective targets with their own planes. Seeing that the assignment of the bomber was completed, Colonel Irascu gave another order to the fighter. The fighter wing is on standby, ready to meet any enemy aircraft that may appear. Fighter wing, received. And Colonel Irascu, who had completed the command task, began to check the results of the bombing at this time. Regardless of Colonel Irascu's calm shouting and commanding the bombing mission, this time he was able to command the air battle through his words, which is a great innovation of the Romanian Aviation Force. You must know that this is Romania's first call command in actual combat. Prior to this, the command of air operations was basically communicated with signal guns, lights, hand flags, etc. This kind of command can only transmit simple orders, and if it is a little more complicated, it can only rely on the pilot's own ability to understand. Although the Romanian Air Force can't do it yet, every aircraft is equipped with a radio. But isn't this a good start? I believe that the General Staff, which sees the capabilities of the aviation force in the future, will definitely install a radio station for each aircraft. The looting air raid lasted for half an hour, and the Romanian bombers who had dropped the bombs reluctantly left. At this time, the Soviet aircraft had just arrived around the Ukrainian card. A large number of enemy fighter jets were found on the right. The number was close to 100. The news of the discovery of the enemy plane came on the radio, which cheered Colonel Irascu. I finally know why the Soviet fighter jets came so late. It turned out to be to avoid the formation of refueling tactics. The fighter wing immediately confronted, and the bombers sped away from the battlefield. Received. As the enemy fighter jets were spotted, the raiding bombers sped away immediately, and the fighter jets hovering high in the sky also pounced on the enemy. So under the eyes of the Soviet army, the largest air battle after World War I began. At the beginning, the Romanian Air Force gave the Soviet fighter a disarm. With their advantages of altitude and speed, the Romanian airmen who drove the Albatros fighter jets made a dive attack on the Soviet aviation. Faced with this kind of attack, the Soviet aviation, who could not dodge in time, panicked. It's not that they haven't seen this attack mode, but that the Albatros fighter was too fast and suddenly appeared in front of their eyes. So after a short and thrilling exchange of fire, many Soviet fighter jets fell from the sky, mixed with 1 or 2 Romanian fighter jets. 3-19. This is the result of the current firefight. In addition to the excellent performance of the Albatros, the Soviet Union's large number of old-fashioned fighters in the late World War I was also the main reason. Where can these veterans be the opponents of the new fighters? And the tactics used by Romania this time also made the Soviet Union's pride not used to it at all. The tactic of diving and pulling up, and the tactics of diving and pulling up, was incompatible with the dogfighting tactics they practiced on weekdays. Isn't this just to bully them, that the plane speed is not as fast as the Romanian, and the elevation is not as high as Romania's? Seeing such a scene, the Soviet aviation officer who led the team gritted his teeth angrily, and there was absolutely nothing he could do. As for regardless of these fighters, go directly to chase those evil bombers. I'm afraid I don't want my men to be shot down from behind by the enemy like a turkey. Seeing that the situation was not right, the leading officer of the Soviet Air Force could only order a retreat. If you don't leave, you will simply consume the enemy's fuel with the life of your own teammates. Therefore, in the eyes of the officers and soldiers of the 35th Division, their aircraft was defeated by the Romanians and fled. Seeing such a scene, Commander Dobolev was even more angry and cursed. What the hell is this? 11-49 is the final result of this air battle. Chapter 570 Luosu Local Conflict 5. The 35th Division, which was hit by the Romanian Air Force, was attacked by the Panzer Division without waiting for a chance to breathe. The officers and soldiers of the 35th Division, who had no time to take a breath, were dumbfounded when they saw the tanks and armored vehicles that were overwhelming. Because there is only one anti-tank gun company under the 35th Division. It is equipped with 12 37mm anti-tank guns. In the face of overwhelming Romanian tanks, this anti-tank gun is completely a drop in the bucket. Therefore, the original explosive packs and cluster grenades became the few remaining anti-tank means of the Soviet Union. Enemy tanks are approaching. Bomb squad in a position. A Soviet officer looked at the slowly approaching tanks and gave orders loudly. I saw a few stern-looking death squad soldiers jumped out of the position with explosive packs and ran towards the tanks that were pressing down. The figure running out of the position obviously attracted the attention of the Romanian soldiers who followed behind and cooperated with the tanks. The first priority of the cooperation between the two is the cooperation between the two, so the guns of the Romanian soldiers are also chasing these people. Crack, clap, clap. After a burst of gunfire, 3 Soviet soldiers fell in a pool of blood. The tanks also found these targets that were a threat to themselves, so they turned their muzzles to deal with these people first. Boom boom. A tank aimed a 47mm shell at a Soviet death squad hidden in a crater. Then 2 explosions sounded, and the soldier disappeared from this world. After seeing this scene, the other death squads could only leave their hiding places and rushed to the tank. They planned to die with the tank. And these daredevils who came out were hit by bullets one after another and fell in front of the position. The nearest death squad was less than 15 meters away from the tank and came close to making it. Seeing the death squad fail, the officer roared with red eyes, "Next batch, come on." I saw that several soldiers rushed out of the position with explosive packs from the perspective of looking down on the entire battlefield. This method can basically only be used on the entire position lacking anti-tank firepower. This approach of using death squads is too harmful to the defensive side. To meet the conditions of being a daredevil, the first is to hold the belief in death and also have a wealth of combat skills. These people are basically the backbone of each army, and they are the core of maintaining the morale of the entire army. And these backbone forces face the threat of enemy armored forces. Steel can only be consumed with human flesh. Speaking of the use of death squads, it is also a manifestation of the Soviet Union's lack of preparation for the use of Romanian armor. Therefore, the position of the 35th Division was quickly fallen under the attack of the Panzer Division, and many of the soldiers who fled in all directions fell under the muzzle of the gun. At the headquarters of the 35th Division, Dobolev Division Chief was reporting the military situation with a face full of gunpowder smoke. Commander, we have been attacked by a large number of enemy tanks, and 2 of the 3 main positions have been lost. We need reinforcement now, or the Ukrainian card will soon be lost. Timoshenko's voice came from the microphone. As I said, the 17th and 51st Divisions are already on their way, and you need to hold on until they arrive. I've told them to speed up and don't drop the Ukrainian card anyway. The Soviet people and Moscow are watching you. Commander Doborev put down the microphone in frustration, and the political commissar beside him asked eagerly, "What did the commander say? What else can I say? Let's stick to the treatment." Hearing Doborev's words, the political commissar said even more anxiously, "There is only one Libato position that has not been lost, but the commander of Zutos just sent a telegram saying that they need reinforcement, otherwise they will not be able to hold it." When Commander Dobolev heard this, he was furious. "Reinforcement, I want them to. But who gave me reinforcement? The 17th and 51st Divisions are still on the way. I'll go there to find reinforcement for him." Let the other 2 regiments that retreated organize reinforcement to go up. No. The political commissar's words were rejected by Doborev on the spot, and I saw him explain. These 2 regiments have lost the battle, and it is not suitable for them to continue to fight. Master Dobolev said, after thinking about it, "Let the Guard Company, the Anti-Aircraft Artillery Company, and other affiliated units draw a battalion of troops and send them up. Tell ZHU Tohov that this is the last reinforcement, and if he wants it, I will be the only one who will go up. The remaining defeated soldiers must send them to them. Stay in the Ukrainian card, and then you need to fight in the streets. Seeing Dobrev's decision, the commissar stopped talking. In this way, the last reinforcement from the Ukrainian card reinforced the Libato position point. When Dobrev was preparing for the last resort, Lurkov was carefully lying in an unobtrusive corner on the Libato position. Because another Romanian offensive came up. He has to hide himself from the enemy because he is a sharpshooter. His platoon had lost too much in the previous battle and was merged with other units. The comrade in arms Sakov, who had been clamoring to fight the Romanians, died in the battle against Romania as he wished. The platoon leader Bikonov also fell under the enemy's tank guns, but Father Mosov was still alive, but he had been sent to the rear field hospital. Because of his injuries, the enemy tanks are still in front, and the enemy infantry is hiding behind these steel monsters, which prevents him from getting a good chance to shoot. When the enemy advanced to 300 meters, there was a shout from the position. Fire. Click, click, click. The few Markin heavy machine guns left in the position roared furiously. These heavy machine guns cannot penetrate the armor of these tanks, but their task is to interfere with the enemy's line of sight and provide the only 37mm tank gun on the position with a chance to fire. Boom. He saw that the anti-tank gun hidden behind the position opened, and its shells exploded beside a tank. Seeing that it failed to hit the target, it caused a roar from the position. Aim for the spot. The quick loading gunner fired again. Boom. This time it hit the target, and I saw a tank standing on the road with black smoke. Good fight. After seeing the target hit, there was cheers from the position. Soldiers have suffered so much in front of enemy tanks that it makes them happy every time they see a tank hit. Boom. Missed again this time. Hey, however, the continuous firing of this anti-tank gun finally aroused the enemy's idea. I saw that the tanks in front of these positions faced the anti-tank guns with a heavy shelling. The violent shelling suddenly caused a loud explosion, and it was obvious that it was an anti-tank shell that had been detonated without looking at it. At this time, Lurkov noticed a Romanian soldier sticking his head out of curiosity. Good chance. Lurkov put the Romanian soldier in the crusher. The Romanian soldier fell in a pool of blood at the sound of a gunshot. After the shooting, Lurkov immediately lay on his stomach and did not dare to move. Sure enough, a burst of machine guns swept around him, and the surrounding vegetation rattled. After a test of firepower, the sound of the machine gun stopped. At this time, Lurkov slowly stepped back, and this place could no longer be used. These are all lessons learned in exchange for blood. Many soldiers who did not understand these died because they opened fire again to reveal their position. Of course, Lurkov did not want to sacrifice for his country like this. Next, he will fire again at the second location he has chosen. As for the situation on the ground, he couldn't care less, because the order he got was not to care about the position, just shoot the enemy freely. Chapter 571 Luosu Local Conflict 6. The reinforced Libato position was not able to hold for long. After 2 hours, the commander Zutorov, who was unable to fight, retreated to Ukrainian Cab with his few remaining troops. After completing the 1st Armored Division that pulled out the surrounding strongholds, it is even more impossible to give the enemy time to rest immediately to keep up. The Ukrainian card battle started immediately. Unlike the positional fighting, however, the fighting in Ukraine was less intense. The main reason is that the morale of the defeated soldiers is not high. Although there are street fighting bonuses, the strength and low morale of the soldiers greatly reduce the effectiveness of street fighting. And the veterans lost too much before, which is also the main reason. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the 35th Division was expelled from the Ukrainian card. When the news of the fall of Ukrainian Kar reached the headquarters in Alexandria, Timoshenko, the commander, slapped the table with anger. How did Dobrev become a division commander, and he didn't even block the enemy for a day? Does he know that he is giving the enemy a chance? This is a crime. In his plan, Timoshenko only needed the 35th Division to block the enemy for a day, and then reinforcement from Kirovograd could arrive, enough to block the Romanian attack. Then he will launch a pincer attack on the new Bulgar on the left flank to restrain the enemy, forcing the enemy to confront him head on. At this time, he will rely on the advantages of troops and artillery to let the Romanians taste the power of the Iron Fist. And now with the retreat of the 35th Division, Kirovograd in the rear is exposed to the Romanians' peak. The more important thing is to put the 17th and 51st Divisions of the reinforcement into a situation where they cannot advance or retreat point. Although he has not personally experienced the power of the armored division on the battlefield, during the Soviet-Polish War, the 1st Cavalry Army he was in was attacked by the armored brigade, and he still remembers its power freshly. The retreat of the 35th Division was to the detriment of its own reinforcement. Timoshenko was not optimistic at all as to whether the two divisions could block the attack of the enemy armored divisions in the field. Although he has a battalion 1 tank in his hand, how could this imitation of Renault 17 be an opponent of the opponent's more than 10-ton tanks? The gap between the two in firepower protection can be seen by individuals. Then what do we do now? Know that Moscow is still waiting for good news from us. The political commissar couldn't help but ask about Timoshen, but this battle was closely watched. If the two messed up, no one would have the confidence to face Stalin's stern gaze. Now we can only find a way to remedy it. When Timoshenko faced the political commissar, now only think of remedies. Send a message to the 17th and 51st Divisions and tell them to stand in place against the imminent Romanian offensive. Hearing what Brother Timoshen said, the political commissar felt a little unbearable. It's too casual for them to keep them on guard in this way. Otherwise, let them go back to Kirovograd. Can they run over the wheels of the wheel on 2 legs? Rather than being raided by enemy tanks in the field, it is better to let them arm them like this. At least help Kirovograd first. Block it. Brother Timoshen knew the true meaning of being kind and not controlling the army, and he immediately made a choice when he saw that something was wrong. Although this is not good for the reinforcement of the two divisions, it is the best way at present. They are all their subordinates. It is not impossible that no one wants them to sacrifice in vain. In addition, the 29th and 37th Divisions were ordered to reinforce Kirovograd immediately, and they must arrive before sunset tomorrow. Timoshenko is now starting to think about Kirovograd's defense. The 29th and 37th Divisions were the closest units to Kirovograd, and he originally planned to use the two divisions as flanking forces. But now with the fall of Ukrainian cap, Kirovograd is threatened by the enemy, and now he can only devote it to Kirovograd to defend this strategically important city. And Kirovograd must not be occupied by the enemy, otherwise his command will be under the threat of the Romanians. At the same time, the enemy will cut off the railway line from Kyiv to the front, and his own troops will also be divided into 2 parts that are not connected. Then there is no need to fight this battle, and there is no other way but to retreat. When the time comes to live up to Moscow's expectations, his own fate will be unpredictable. In addition, I ordered the troops on the front line of Bryansk to send the 11th Division back to Alexandria, and ordered the 19th Corps and the 23rd Corps to select 2 divisions to form a fast force and let them rush to Kirov at night. Listening to Brother Timoshen's words, the political commissar on the side couldn't help but say, "Are you afraid that Kirovoglu won't be able to hold on?" The sad-faced Timoshen didn't deny it either. Yes, as a qualified commander-in-chief, Timoshen naturally knew the truth of losing before winning. And this time the 35th Division failed to block the enemy for even a day. So how terrifying the opponent's attack power would be. Now he lacks confidence in Kirovoglu's defensive ability. Although after adding the 2 divisions of the 29th and 37th Divisions, there are as many as 3 divisions defending here, but he still has no confidence. Following Timoshenko's order, the Soviet army also adjusted with the fall of Ukrainian cap. As for Lieutenant General Hoffman in Ukraine, he is also melancholy for a piece of news. More than 30 tanks were destroyed in this battle. It seems that the armored division's local attack capability is still a lot worse. Hoffman took the loss list and sighed. There's nothing we can do about it. We've actually done a good job. If we switch to an infantry division, we need to fight for at least a day. Guderian, who was on the side, interjected. At this moment, a staff officer boarded the command car with a note. Report. Information just received. Our plane found Soviet troops 25 kilometers east of Ukraine, with a strength of about 20,000. As soon as he heard the situation, Hoffman immediately took the note. This is an intelligence found by a reconnaissance plane, showing that a large number of enemy troops were found to be around 20,000 between Ukrainian Kyiv and Kirovograd. The reconnaissance plane that found the enemy hovered over its head for a while and flew to Ukraine to drop the news with a barrel. So the staff who got the news quickly informed Lieutenant General Hoffman of the information point, and Hoffman couldn't help laughing when he saw this information. This group of enemies should want to reinforce the Ukrainian card, but I didn't expect that we won this place so quickly, so that these people can't advance or retreat. Guderian also asked with a smile. Then accept this gift or not? Why not accept it? Since Brother Timoshin is so polite, I can't waste the kindness of the other party. Lieutenant General Hoffman turned his head and ordered. Immediately order everyone to end their rest and march to Kirovogla. Let's go eat this enemy. In addition, send a message to Major General Fergus, the commander of the 5th Division, asking him to send 2 regiments of troops to follow our division. Act together. Yes, thanks to Hoffman's blessing this time, the 5th Division got on a car and followed the armored division and made a lot of contributions in the battle to conquer the Ukrainian card. And the matter of eating meat this time naturally cannot forget each other. Following Hoffman's order, the armored division, who had a short rest, took part of the 5th Division and rushed towards the 17th and 51st Divisions of the Soviet troops. I believe this will be an enjoyable battle. Chapter 572 Luosu Local War 7. The fate of the 17th and 51st Soviet Divisions was thus decided. On the field without positions, encountering malicious Romanian armored units, the outcome was already expected. On the open field, the fallen Soviet soldiers can be seen everywhere, and there are corpses and weapons everywhere. A group of Soviet prisoners with their hands raised in dejection walk towards the Ukrainian can in the rear under the escort of Romanian soldiers. On the other side of the battlefield, vehicles such as tanks and armored vehicles that have ended the battle are parked aside, and the crew members are also sitting together in 2s and 3s to smoke and chat. Soldiers can rest, but officers cannot rest. Distributing fuel and ammunition and erecting maintenance crews to repair damaged tanks and other vehicles are also among their tasks, and Lieutenant General Hoffman, who was the commander of the division, wasn't much better, even though these things were done by the officers below. However, tasks such as marching assignments and operational plans still require him to decide. This is not a new battle plan placed in front of him. These staff were fascinated by the results of the battle, and they actually wanted to capture Kirovograd with us and the 5th Division. After reading the battle plan, Hoffman couldn't help complaining. What? Guderian, who was surprised by Hoffman's words, couldn't help but ask, isn't the Soviet army only 1 division in Kirovograd? I don't think it will be a problem to win Kirovograd. That was yesterday. Today's aviation reconnaissance found that 2 Soviet divisions were rapidly approaching Kirovograd. We were held back by the 2 Soviet divisions for too much time, and we couldn't be in them. Arrive in Kirovograd before. Hoffman said regretfully. In fact, this is not a pity. The armor division has annihilated 2 Soviet divisions and crippled 1 division. More importantly, it has torn a big hole in the Soviet defense line, making Timoshenko passive everywhere. However, Hoffman may not know the idiom of Lang Wang Shu, but he must understand the meaning because of his current state of mind. Then what do we do next? Facing Guderian's question, Hoffman said, we lost a lot of money in these 2 battles. 78 tanks were damaged and broke down, and 23 armored vehicles were unusable. 13 self-propelled artillery were also lost. We have dropped our combat effectiveness by 30. Now only we can reorganize the intact tanks and continue to march towards Kirovograd to help open the way for the army behind. However, the goal of capturing Kirovograd is no longer for us, so we can only encircle the points for reinforcement. Previous battle, Guderian also knew that tanks had less of a role in cities. Looks like that's all there is to it. Subsequently, the armor division reorganized its troops, leaving some personnel to repair the damaged tanks and vehicles. For those that could not be repaired, try to remove the equipment and let them wait for the subsequent replenishment of tanks and armored vehicles. Hoffman then continued towards Kirovograd with the remaining troops and a part of the 5th Division. When Hoffman set off for Kirovograd, the 29th and 37th Divisions, which were marching all the way, finally arrived at Kirovograd within the specified time. At this time, Kirovograd was completely busy before the war, and sandbag fortifications were built at many street corners. Others, led by the army, were busy digging trenches and hanging barbed wire. Outside the city is a busy scene. A large number of traffic trenches stretched everywhere, and the machine gun fortresses also exudes the smell of fresh earth, towering at various points. These are the results of all the residents of Kirovograd for 2 days and 2 nights. Under the mobilization of the Soviet army, almost everyone went to the position to build fortifications. As for the officers and soldiers of the 2 divisions arriving in Kirovograd, many of them sat tired and rested on the side of the street. The guards and soldiers who were in charge of receiving them on the side were busy giving them water and food, which made the reception scene busy. Point as the commanders of the 2 divisions, Major General Rodker and Major General Toramanth, would naturally not crowd together ordinary officers and soldiers. Under the reception of Major General Dikhtov, the commander of the garrison, they first went to Major General Dikhtov's headquarters to learn about the specific situation. Thank you for leading the team to support Kirovograd. Without the support of the 2, I still don't know how to fight when the Romanians come to the city. Although it was Timoshenko's order to reinforce the 29th and 37th divisions, Major General Dikhtov only politely expressed his gratitude to Major General Rodker and Major General Toraman in a manner that would not be taken for granted. Where is the enemy now? Major General Rodker, the commander of the 29th division, was the most impatient. As soon as he came up, he asked about the military situation. According to the current information, the 1st Armored Division of the enemy's vanguard force and part of the 5th Division have appeared in the Multima Division west of Kirovograd. This is the information from 15 minutes ago. Under the guidance of Major General Dikhtov, everyone quickly found this small village on the map. I saw Major General Rodker frowned and said, "Then the enemy will arrive outside the city as soon as tonight. A night march is unlikely. I think it will be early tomorrow morning." Major General Dikhtov expressed his judgment and continued to explain when he saw the inquiring eyes looking over. At night, the enemy's alert range will be reduced to a minimum, and the Romanians already know that there are 3 divisions in the city's defenders. Are they not afraid of our surprise attack? And the enemy's leading troops are very tired from continuous fighting, and they also need a night's rest to replenish physical fitness. The approving eyes around him have said everything, and Major General Dikhtov continued to speak. As for the defensive area of the 2 troops, this is how I arranged it. Under the narration of Major General Dikhtov, the 29th Division was defended by the 29th Division from the south of the city to the Bausel Street. Major General Dikhtov sent someone to familiarize them with the topography here. The north of the city from Teldo Street to the Snow Vale will be defended by the 37th Division, and people will also be sent to familiarize them with the terrain here. And the west of the city facing the Romanians will be defended by his troops, which is not Major General Dikhtov. Rather, his troops were most familiar with this place and were more adapted to the use of the terrain. And Chengdang will have armed militia in charge, as Chengdang, farthest from the enemy, handed over to the militia, is not worried at all. After all, these people are all locals, with the blessing of defending their hometown from being invaded by the Romanians. Their defensive ability is still trustworthy. Now is not the time of the great famine in Ukraine. At this time Ukrainians still have patriotic enthusiasm for Soviet Russia. There must be a leading party, but it is impossible for a large number of people to ask to join the invaders. After Major General Dikhtov had assigned the task, he said again, "We need to fight together next. For the sake of the Great Soviet, we will defend the city." For the Soviets. Chapter 573 Luosu Local War 8. Kirsto lay quietly on a pile of rubble, and his dusty military uniform had already been perfectly integrated into it. Today is the 3rd day of Kirsto's participation in the battle, and his 17th Division is one of the members involved in the Battle of Kirovograd. This time, in order to attack Kirovograd, Admiral Mandev arranged for 4 divisions. Now they are fighting hard street battles. Those local residents who were not reconciled to the defeat of the Soviet army were still unwilling to delay the pace of Romania's victorious army, trying to get foreign reinforcement. But how is this possible? The first 2 divisions of the enemy's reinforcement from the north have been defeated by the Armored Division and the Cavalry Division. There are also 4 divisions in the south guarding against reinforcement from the Soviet Union, while the troops of the 2 divisions in the east are fighting against the troops of Alexandria, and the latest battle report shows that these Soviet troops are also blocked outside. Therefore, the defenders are already the turtles in the urn, and there is no hope for them. Just wait for them to be eliminated. There were 7 Soviet soldiers, and 2 militias in civilian clothes, and a machine gun. Kirsto silently calculated what he saw in his heart, while calculating how to take this place. Seeing the situation at the intersection, he stepped back cautiously, and behind him was his subordinate Lexmond. Squad leader. "How many people are there?" Lechmond, who had an anxious look and a beard, asked in a low voice. Kirsto glanced at him, the warning look in his eyes evident. "If you say anything at this time, if you hear it, you will be shocked." The strong man who was warned by his eyes could only silently stop his mouth. After retreating to the position, where the other team members were waiting not far away, Kirsto said in a low voice, "There are 7 Soviet soldiers guarding the intersection, and 2 militiamen in civilian clothes are using rifles. In addition, there is a disc machine gun at a window of the small building on the left. The disc machine gun Kirsto refers to is the Jagerov light machine gun widely used by the Soviet Union in World War II. This gun was designed in 1926 and entered the army in 1928. As the heaviest task of the Kiev military region, it is natural to prioritize the replacement of this machine gun to deal with the threat from Romania. And its unique bullet disc design makes it recognizable at a glance. Just listen to Kirsto. After the introduction of the opponent's strength and weapons, began to arrange an attack on it. "Loke, Thor, and Billy, you are in charge of attacking from the left for a while. You need to pay attention to the second building in your direction. Where there is a gap, there is a possibility that someone may be ambushed. You need to pay more attention." In the face of Kirsto's words, the 3 nodded in understanding. After speaking, Kirsto continued with the assigned task. This time he named a tall and thin soldier's name. "Rick, you have the best marksmanship. You are responsible for dealing with machine guns and ensuring that we are not suppressed by firepower. Give it to me." After getting Rick's definite answer, Kirsto said again, "Others follow me. Pay attention to shoot the enemy as soon as possible, causing their panic." After Kirsto finished speaking, he was afraid that there would be many dreams in the night. "Now we attack the watch." 5 minutes later, after Kirsto's voice fell, the people assigned to the task all left. Loke and the other 3 touched to the left, while Rick searched for the best shooting spot by himself and was responsible for getting the enemy's machine gun. And Kirsto took the remaining 5 people and quietly touched the enemy's position. They needed to launch a surprise attack as close to the enemy as possible. Time passed by like that, and Kirsto looked at the distance between the 2 sides, then looked at the watch. Then after a gesture of throwing a grenade, the team members who understood it took out the grenade and prepared to throw it. On a 2-3 grenadier Kirsto, who had finished the countdown, shouted and threw the grenade, while the other team members also threw the grenade out. After learning, a violent explosion sounded in front of the enemy fortifications, and the frightened defenders immediately opened fire on them. The fast-fired bullets banged on the obstacles, crushing them too hard to lift their heads at this time. The enemy's machine guns also opened fire, and the sound of Titit's machine guns caused a symphony of death to play on the rubble-filled streets at this time. Rick, who had long been aiming at the machine gun window, looked at the shooter whose half body was exposed and pulled the trigger. Snapped after a crisp gunshot. The shooter's chest was stained with blood, and the continuous sound of machine gun fire was interrupted. Snapped immediately after the second shot. The sub-shooter who wanted to continue shooting fell down. Be careful, there are snipers, someone in the defending army shouted, which made the Soviet soldiers immediately look nervous, and the frequency of shooting also dropped a lot. Now is a good opportunity, and Kirsto, who was secretly thinking of it, shouted superior after speaking. He took his team members to touch the Soviet troops on the position under the cover of the explosion smoke. It needs to be explained here that Kirsto and others threw Romania's new number 2 offensive grenade. This kind of grenade is mainly prepared for street fighting. In addition to the lethality of other grenades, it has an additional function. That is, the smoke is particularly large. This grenade, developed by the Bucharest arsenal, was especially popular with soldiers during the attack on Kirovograd. They wanted to be exposed to the enemy's sight, so that Kirsto and others all carried such grenades. This also proves the development and growth of Romania's military industry. At this time, the 3 of Loke, who were outflanking the left wing, also launched an attack. After 3 shots were fired, a Soviet soldier fell with his neck covered. This time, the Soviet soldiers on the position quickly turned their guns and shot at the 3-point grenadier. There was a roar from Kirsto in the smoke, and there were several explosions in front of the position point. Throwing grenades, a Soviet veteran on the position listened to the direction of the sound and estimated that the enemy he touched was approaching, and also shouted to his comrades, so the two sides were throwing grenades at each other. And even the bombing of the fortifications. As the commander of the garrison, the veteran coped well. If the soldiers had just participated in the battle, they might have suffered heavy losses due to the explosion of the grenade. However, Kirsto participated in a lot of battles, and he knew the Soviet army's response very well, so the actions of the veteran were all he expected. In fact, Kirsto and others still have a long way to go. The previous shout was to make the defenders think that they had launched a charge to consume the enemy's grenades. Because of the many days of street fighting, he has long been told that the grenade and machine guns are extremely powerful in street fighting, and if they are used well, they can instantly disintegrate the enemy's fighting spirit. So, after consuming a wave of grenades from the enemy, Kirsto shouted a few more times and threw a few grenades. After a battle of wits and courage with the defenders, I feel almost the same. Kirsto shouted again. Rush. This time it's real. Unexpectedly, the defending soldiers were attacked by Kirsto and others who rushed out of the smoke. The submachine gun Kirsto was holding at close range was a deadly weapon, and 3 Soviet soldiers fell to the ground by his close range shooting. The team members who rushed into the position also fought a bloody battle with the defenders. This small battle is bloody and short, and it tests the combat skills and weaponry of every soldier. In this regard, Kirsto and others have an absolute advantage. By the time the battle was over, all the Soviet troops had fallen, and Kirsto and others are naturally not unscathed. More or less people are injured. Squad leader Billy is dead. Leakman, covered in gunpowder smoke, reported the bad news to Kirsto. Go and have a look. Kirsto, who didn't have time to rest, immediately rushed to the left street under the guidance of Leckman. Kirsto brushed aside the surrounding soldiers to see Billy vomiting blood. On the blood-stained gauze on his abdomen, Loke, who has the best relationship with him, was helping him to suppress the blood that came out. Billy, you'll be fine. I said you'd go to your hometown to see you, and you'd have to introduce your sister to me. With a nervous look on his face, Loke said that he could not cry in the end. And Kirsto understands Loke's mood, and the relationship between the two in his class is the best. Watching the best comrade in arms die, who cannot cry. So Kirsto handed Loke a grey handkerchief. Let me have a word with Billy. Kirsto looked at Billy, who was about to die, and asked with a silent expression, Billy, what else do you wish for? I miss mom and sister. B used all his strength to say this sentence. Don't worry, we'll take you back to your hometown. You can see them every day when you get there. Hearing Kirsto's words, Billy, contented, took his last breath. Rest in peace, Billy. Kirsto, who finished the blessing gesture, saw that the expressions of the others present were a little heavy, had to speak to Loke. I'll give you the task of bringing Billy home. But before that, we'll have to wait for someone else to replace us. I know you're sad, you and Belgian bro, and so do I, but it's wartime. We have to save ourselves before we can bring Billy back. Thank you, Monitor. I want to stay with Billy for a while. No problem. Such battles take place at any time in Kirovograd, and ordinary officers and soldiers like Kirsto can only complete their tasks in the war and try to protect themselves. No one can always be shrouded in a lucky halo. And the brutal Kirovograd battle continues, and they still need to continue fighting. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574, Luosu Local War End. Kirovograd's resistance has continued, but the reinforcement they hoped for have never arrived, and Timoshenko in Alexandria is also worried about it. To the north, the Northern Soviet Army, consisting of the 19th Army and the 23rd Army, seemed to be interrupted after the first 2 divisions were devastated by Romanian armored and cavalry units. Can't break through the enemy's interception. Moreover, its commander also sent a telegram to complain that the enemy armored divisions have been hovering on their flanks, preventing them from attacking the enemy's interception with all their strength. In the south, the Southern Soviet Army, consisting of the 7th Army and the 34th and 41st Divisions, was also blocked by the Romanian Army of the 4 divisions at a place called Darlina, 20 kilometers away from Kirovograd. As for the east, where his headquarters is located, he managed to organize nearly 3 divisions in an attempt to clear the siege of Kirovograd. But still no effect. The Romanian of the 2 divisions made their troops unable to advance one step. The restless Timoshchenko called for the staff. Send a telegram to General Norkov in the south. Ask them when they will be able to break through the enemy's interception, and tell them that Kirovograd won't last long. Yes, Comrade Commander. The staff, who didn't dare to come out, hurriedly rushed to send the report, as if they were fleeing. After the staff went out, Comrade Moklov, the political commissar, walked in. I saw him ask anxiously, "How is the battle now?" Facing the political commissar's question, Timoshchenko shook his head. "It still hasn't changed. At present, all the ministries are blocked around Kirovograd and have not been able to break through the enemy's interception. Think about it again. I have sent a message to the frontline commanders asking them to do their best to reinforce Kirovograd. But there is still no progress." Hearing Timoshchenko's words, Moklov couldn't help but suggest, "Otherwise, we will mobilize troops to intensify our attack." Hearing the suggestion of the political commissar, Timoshchenko said directly, "Where can we draw troops now, my comrade political commissar? At present, the troops in our military region are basically on the front line, and the troops left behind have been transferred to a minimum. There are no more troops." Thinking about it makes me angry. There are nearly 300,000 troops in a large Kiev military region, but now they can't recruit anyone. And after Moklov heard Timoshchenko's words, couldn't help but continue, "I also know that there is no way to draw troops from the rear. I mean, draw a little from each division on the front line and put them on the battlefield. This will not work. It is useless if there are fewer troops, and the problem of the front line will be affected by drawing too many troops. This is absolutely not feasible." Facing the suggestion of the political commissar, Timoshchenko immediately refused. "We'll be quietly dispatched and let them set off at night. It should be fine." Moklov, who was not giving up, still insisted on his plan. "Comrade Moklov, do you know the consequences of this?" Seeing that the political commissar kept insisting, Brother Timoshchenko was also a little annoyed, only to listen to him suppress his anger and say, "Let me analyze the consequences of doing so for you. First of all, the only troops that can be dispatched within 2 days' journey are those on the borderline that are still facing the enemy. According to your plan, at least 1 per division needs to be dispatched. Only the regiment can work. It can be said that it is very difficult to hide so many regiment-level troops, even if the enemy does not find out. As long as the troops appear to fight in Kirovograd, it will be impossible to keep this secret, and at this time the enemy will definitely launch an offensive on the border. If we fail to free Kirovograd at that time, our troops will have a very high possibility of being surrounded by the enemy. Such a great responsibility is enough to make us sinners of the Soviet Union. Therefore, comrade political commissar, you should not mention such a suggestion." Hearing Timoshchenko's explanation, Commissar Moklov finally knew the terrible consequences, so he made a rare defense for himself. "The current war situation has not changed. I'm afraid that Moscow will be impatient. I know this. If I lose the battle, I will take my responsibility." Hearing Timoshchenko's words, the political commissar Moklov almost got angry. "You can take this responsibility if you say it is, and Moscow must believe it. Neither of us will be able to run away by then." Just as the Commissar Moklov was complaining in his heart, a red phone rang. This made both of them look terrified. Not that they were afraid of the red phone, but that the phone was connected to Moscow. But it was impossible to answer, so Timoshchenko picked up the phone anyway. Only a middle-aged voice with a Georgian accent came from the phone. "Hey, is that Brother Timoshchenko?" The voice immediately made Brother Timoshchenko come back to his senses, and he hurriedly replied, It's me, Comrade Stalin. Are the troops in trouble? No, Comrade Stalin. Then resolve this battle as soon as possible. Yes, Comrade Stalin. Just a few words made Timoshenko's back soaked. Who called? It's Comrade Stalin. Timoshenko's words made Moklov look even more frightened. Comrade Stalin called to inquire about the situation of the war. No, he only asked if my troops had any difficulties and asked me to resolve the battle as soon as possible. Moklov, who heard Timoshenko's answer, looked even more ugly. It seems that Comrade Stalin already knows the current situation of the war, and he is expressing his dissatisfaction. This is a current battle situation has shown that there is little hope of winning, and it is good to maintain an undefeated. Moreover, this battle also shows that our army has not yet reached the level of the imperial powers. I believe the members of Moscow should have seen it. Speaking of which, Timoshenko has an idea in his heart, that is, what the meaning of Stalin's last sentence represents. He didn't think that Comrade Stalin was far away in Moscow to express his concern, and he passed through layers of transfers just to ask himself if his troops had any difficulties. Then he must be dissatisfied with the result of the battle, so he needs to make himself do something. So what is it? Brother Timoshen has been unable to guess the intention. In fact, it is not impossible to guess, but there are some things that cannot be said. And just when Timoshenko was pondering, the battle in Kirovogla finally subsided. The Romanian army completely defeated the defenders and occupied the key city. The last formed army was destroyed by the Romanian army. And now the Soviet Union's war situation in Ukraine has fallen into a total passive, which makes Timoshenko make up his mind. The day after the fall of Kirovograd, a telegram was sent to Moscow from Alexandria, the seat of his command. Chapter 575 Peace Talk 1. Timoshenko's telegram caused an uproar in Moscow, and no one could have imagined that the Soviet Red Army would be defeated in another encounter with Romania. Then someone needs to be held accountable, so in a Kremlin conference room, someone was expressing their views on this. I think Timoshenko, as the commander, has an inescapable responsibility for the defeat against the Romanians this time. The one who came up pointed the finger at the commander. Because the decision to play against the Romanians was a decision made by Moscow. First of all, the Central Committee is right, and the Soviet officers and soldiers also fought heroically, and that's right. That's not the commander's problem, it's who else's problem. And this committee member's words immediately attracted Voroshilov's questioning. Then how are you going to deal with Brother Timoshen? Of course the commissioner who was questioned would not give an answer. Comrade Stalin had to make this decision. So he had no choice but to turn the subject to the leader of the Soviet Union. This needs to be decided by Comrade Stalin. I unconditionally support Comrade Stalin's decision. Following the commissar's words, all eyes turned to Stalin. I saw Stalin holding his corn pipe and asked, Comrade Voroshilov, what is your opinion? In the face of Stalin's inquiry, Voroshilov, who had already made up his mind, said calmly, our opinion is that in this battle, Timoshenko and the political commissar Moklov do have an inescapable responsibility for command. I think they need to be removed first and wait until the military committee selects a suitable candidate to take over the work in their hands. But before that, two people are needed to sit in the Kiev military district to ensure the order of the army during this period and to deal with the pressure of the Romanians. In fact, this decision seems very serious, and the punishment of dismissal is not easy at all. However, the next sentence temporarily continues to manage the Kiev military region, which is very problematic. Because when to choose a suitable candidate, it is not Voroshilov, the beating said Stalin, who has the final say. Such a result can not only appease the emotions of the people, but also save Timoshenko and others. Okay, just follow this opinion. In the face of Voroshilov's apparent partiality, Stalin agreed. Since it was Stalin's decision, how could other people stand up against his will? And that's the end of the story about the responsibility for defeat. I saw Stalin speak. Then let's talk about the negotiation with Romania. At this time, all the members present cheered up, because the issue is more important than dealing with those responsible. At this time Molotov stood up and said, I think the current war has caused great losses to the people of the two countries, and it is not conducive to the current peaceful international environment. Therefore, in line with the principle of good neighborliness and friendship, I believe that this peace negotiation initiated by our side will also be able to win the international community understand. After Molotov said what the Soviet side had proposed for peace talks, he continued. However, although we are the first to open the peace proposal, I think we need to adhere to several conditions. First of all, this conflict was initiated by Romania, but with a peaceful attitude, we will not pursue the issue of responsibility. And in order to reflect with the sincerity of our peace, neither side will be allowed to offer reparations to the other. Helmech Mountain, where the conflict between the other two parties has been triggered, we can make concessions to admit that this area is owned by Romania, but only in this area. In addition, the two warring parties should exchange prisoners and captured weapons, and both need to be returned. Frontiers before the conflict before September 1931. In addition to the losses suffered by the people in the war, Molotov kept saying the terms drawn up by people well versed in diplomacy. In general, the Soviet Union does not pay indemnities or cedes land, and recognizes that the Helmech Mountains are owned by Romania. These are the main conditions. After listening to the conditions stated by Molotov, the present committee members talk with each other and exchange their views. In general, this diplomatic condition is in line with the wishes of those present. In any case, I lost this battle. Although we can mobilize our troops to continue the fight, this is not in line with the current general environment of the Soviet Union's peaceful construction. And this battle also made many members see that the current Soviet army still needs to be strengthened, otherwise it is not enough to ensure the security of the country. So in the face of Molotov's proposal, no one objected. After seeing that no one objected, Stalin said, "Since no one has spoken, then we will raise our hands to vote whether we agree to follow Comrade Molotov's proposal. Raise your hand if you agree. Swish. Everyone present raised their hands. Then the views on this peace talks are unanimously approved. After the resolution was finalized, Stalin addressed the chairman of the Soviet State Planning Commission, V.V. Kibyshev. Comrade Kibyshev, stay here. Okay. Comrade Stalin. After everyone else was gone, Stalin spoke. Your planning committee, can you add a military-industrial plan to the 5-year plan? Although Stalin was only using a negotiating tone, Kibyshev, who was in charge of the first 5-year plan, naturally knew that he was giving orders to himself. Quite alright, Comrade Stalin. Just don't know what to add. Stalin thought about the telegram sent to him by Timoshenko and expressed his thoughts. Mainly aircraft, tank research and development, and the Navy also need to be paid attention to. A subsequent proposal for the Navy, also because of the rapid development of the Romanian Navy in recent years, has made Stalin feel threatened. Although this time it is only against Romania on land, who knows if Romania will use its Navy next time. Moreover, the Black Sea coast of the Soviet Union is a wealthy area and naturally needs to respond. In particular, being taught by Romania several times in a row, made Stalin urgently enhance the strength of the army and navy to deal with the surrounding diplomatic environment. But Stalin's words made Kibyshev wrinkle his forehead. The research and development of aircraft and tanks can be added. However, if the Navy adds it, it will affect the smooth completion of the first 5-year plan. The research and development of aircraft and tanks is already in the voluntary plan, and it does not matter if there is a slight inclination of resources. However, the Navy's investment is much larger than that. If the first 5-year plan is to be successfully completed, it is best to implement the next plan year. That's what Kibyshev was thinking. Then added to the second 5-year plan. The Soviet Union can not only focus on domestic construction, but also needs to strengthen the defense cause. Stalin is not an unreasonable person either. A little thought will indeed increase the difficulty of the first 5-year plan, so I have to bear with it. Yes, Comrade Stalin. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.